A hush hung over Winterfell as dawn spilled pale gold across the courtyard. Snowmelt dripped in tiny rivulets from the stone ramparts, whisper soft against the flagstones, while the banners of House Stark stirred lazily in the early summer breeze. Jon Snow lingered alone atop the battlements, gloved hands wrapped around the cold granite merlon, his breath rising in faint plumes. Though the air tasted of thaw and distant pine, winter's memory clung to him, the ghost of cold nights on the wall, of vows spoken before black granite markers and brothers, now dead. But dawn this morning carried something else too. The promise of a future he had scarcely dared to imagine. Somewhere beyond the southern horizon rode a gilt-edged host beneath the golden rose of Highgarden, escorting the Lady Margaery Tyrell northward, and fate itself seemed to gallop with them. Jon's eyes drifted toward the distant godswood, crimson leaves glowing against the morning light. Ghost padded from the shadows beneath the arch, white as winter, red eyes watchful. The dire wolf halted beside him, muzzle nudging his glove. Jon scratched behind a tufted ear, mind racing. Marriage. The word felt foreign on his tongue, perfumed and courtly, far from the harsh cadence of duty drilled into him by old Sir Elizar Thorne. Yet the raven bearing the Tyrell seal had left no doubt. Margaery, clever, radiant, thrice widowed by kings and would-be kings, would bind herself to the North's chosen son. Not for love, perhaps, but for something larger. Peace, power, survival. Call it what one wished. Jon turned at the soft scrape of boots. Sansa approached, auburn hair braided against a fur-lined mantle of gray and white. Her smile carried traces of their mother. Her gaze, the steel of their father. "She'll be here before nightfall," Sansa said, drawing up beside him. "Eh?" Jon's voice was low, hoarse from too many council sessions debating the risks. "And half the realm will be watching." Sansa folded her hands. She survived Joffrey, Renly's ghost, and Tommen's tragedy. If any southern lady understands the game we enter, it is Margaery Tyrell. You need allies, Jon. She needs safety. Together, perhaps the realm gains hope. Hope. He nearly scoffed. Hope had died upon the wall when Sir Elizar thrust steel through his heart. It had resurrected only in whispers when Melisandre's fires coaxed him back. Even now he wondered if that breath of life belonged to him truly, or to some purpose the Red Woman served. He had banished her southward, but her prophecies lingered like smoke on his clothes. Sansa studied him. "Does the thought trouble you so deeply? I've led men to war, killed and been killed. But framing vows before nobles with knives for tongues, that's a different battlefield." He exhaled. "She deserves more than a reluctant groom." "Reluctant?" Sansa's tone softened. "You speak as though duty alone binds you. Yet I've seen the way you watch the skies each time a raven arrives from the Reach. You respect her mind." "Respect? Yes." In the parchment-thin letters they'd exchanged, Margaery's wit sparkled brighter than forged steel. She teased his blunt northern phrases, answered strategy with strategy, and confessed dreams of leading her people beyond the politics that had swallowed 3 husbands. He admired her courage more each day. Yet beyond admiration lay uncharted waters. He'd never danced in candlelit halls, or whispered double-edged compliments between courses. "I am the wolf raised as a crow," he thought. "She is the rose whose thorns draw blood only if you forget their bite." Sansa touched his arm. "Father once told me a good marriage is forged like a sword. Heated, folded, and tempered. The heat will come, but the tempering is yours to shape. Trust her, Jon." Bells tolled from the distant gatehouse. The Tyrell procession had been sighted on the King's Road. Jon straightened, heart thudding. Ghost let out a quiet rumble, ears prickling toward the southern road. Day drifted toward dusk, and Winterfell's courtyard brimmed with color rarely seen north of the Neck. Gold-embroidered cloaks fluttered beside direwolf-stamped guards. Rose-scented candles mingled with wood smoke from feasting pits. The Tyrell Knights formed a disciplined ring around an ornate green carriage trimmed in ivory. When the coach door opened, a hush rippled through the gathering. Lady Margaery emerged, gowns of emerald and cream swirling like spring's first bloom against the stone. Dark brown hair tumbled over her shoulders, caught by the breeze. Her eyes, hazel and bright, swept the assembled nobles without hesitation. Jon stepped forward, cloak brushing the ground. He bowed, every heartbeat drumming in his ears. "Lady Margaery, Winterfell welcomes you." She dipped a curtsy, gaze never leaving his. "Your Grace, the honor is mine. The North's strength is spoken of even in Highgarden's fragrant halls. I pray to see it firsthand, and perhaps lend some southern warmth to these cold stones." A faint smile tugged at Jon's cheeks, surprising him. "We have warmth enough for friends." "Then may we be friends indeed," she replied, low enough that only he caught it. The formal greetings unfolded. Maester Wolkan intoning lineage, Lord Glover presenting gifts of white weave wool, Lady Alice Karstark offering amber mead. Throughout, Jon sensed the undercurrent. Northern lords eyeing the Reach entourage, Tyrell retainers scanning for hidden daggers. Trust would take time. At dusk's first star, torches were lit beneath the Weirwood's crimson canopy. There, before the heart tree, vows would be spoken. The old gods cared little for southern pomp. Here words were wind and blood the seal. Jon and Margaery stood side by side upon a crimson leaf carpet. Her gloved hand brushed his, a fleeting contact that steadied him more than any sword hilt. Bran, now the three-eyed raven, presided, his distant gaze like moonlight on still water. He spoke the ancient words in a voice free of boyhood, echoing through the grove. "When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives." Bran's eyes lingered on Jon. "Will you bind your fates, that the pack may live?" "I will," Jon answered, voice firm. "I will," Margaery echoed without tremor. They cut palms with a dragonglass blade. Blood mingled, dark red against white bark, soaking into the roots of Winterfell's heart. A hush fell across the circle. A hush that felt like the earth itself breathing. Somewhere above, wings swept the twilight. Jon glanced skyward, expecting only ravens. Instead, the outline of a dragon rode the high air, silhouette framed by the setting sun. Rhaegal, the green-scaled, wild-eyed beast who had followed Jon from Dragonstone, circled once, then peeled toward the distant hills. A silent sentinel. Gasps trembled through the crowd. Fear danced with awe. Margaery's eyes widened, but no scream escaped her. She inclined her head in deliberate grace. "It seems even the skies honor our union." Jon breathed. "Or warn those who would break it." Feasting lasted deep into the night. In the great hall, tables groaned beneath roast boar, river trout, and baked apples dripping honey. Minstrels plucked lively tunes. Tyrell wine flowed like a summer river. Yet conversation flickered around one subject: the dragon overhead and the storm it foretold. Jon sat beside Margaery at the high table. She tasted each northern dish with genuine curiosity, praising flavors unfamiliar to her southern palate. Between courses, they shared quiet exchanges, tactics, harvests, the alliances they must court. "You've seen war," she said softly, fingers tracing the rim of her goblet. "The Reach has known little since Renly fell. My people crave stability. If I ride north with you, I ask only that peace be more than a promise." "Then see." He met her gaze. "Peace must be won like any castle. Stone by stone. The Lannisters sit the Iron Throne. They will not yield it because two houses wed." "Agreed." Margaery's lips curved in a smile both warm and sharp. "But a rose can grow through even Lannister stone given time, and a dragon's fire to crack the mortar." Jon found himself chuckling, a strange ease blooming in his chest. Around them, lords toasted, unaware of strategies taking root over quiet laughter. Near midnight, as dancers whirled, Davos Seaworth approached, voice low. "Your Grace, a raven from White Harbor. Lord Manderly writes of Lannister emissaries moving on the neck, spies perhaps, or envoys with sharper teeth." Jon's mirth cooled. "They test our borders already." Margaery set her goblet aside. "Let them. We'll test their resolve in return." Her tone carried a steely edge that mirrored his own. In weeks that followed, Winterfell transformed into a crossroads of banners. From White Harbor rode Manderly knights in blue and white. From Bear Island came Lady Lyanna Mormont, small yet fierce. Even houses once hesitant, the Serwins, the Umbers, sent riders to witness the stark Tyrell pact. Margaery moved among them with courtly grace, coaxing northern matrons into shared laughter, discussing harvest yields with weather-scarred farmers, and memorizing the names of every child who tugged her sleeve. She donned furs over silk, braved drizzling hunts with the young lords, and listened beneath a heart tree to Bran's tales of times long vanished. The North, slow to warm, found itself disarmed by her earnest curiosity. Jon watched, half astonished. One evening, as they strolled beyond the walls, she paused beside the still frozen pool. Moonlight silvered her cloak. Beneath it, blood from a pricked finger marked a small wound gained during archery practice earlier that day. "Your people call me Southron Rose," she said, toes crunching frost. "But roses need root and soil. I would plant myself here if you'll have me. Truly have me, not only for alliance." The solemn vulnerability surprised him. In answer, he took her gloved hand, pressing it to his chest where the faint scar of the Night's Watch dagger lay. "This heart beats because second chances exist. You are mine if you wish it." Her smile glowed warmer than the torches on the parapets. Above, a low roar rumbled across the stars. Rhaegal glided overhead, emerald scales glinting. Margaery did not flinch. Instead, she lifted her free hand, palm open to the sky. The dragon's shadow swept over them like a passing cloud. Come late summer, word reached them that Queen Cersei's golden lions had clawed through the riverlands, extorting grain and conscripts to replenish coin-starved coffers. Report spoke of Tarly men in Lannister Red, the very forces that once answered Highgarden's call. Lady Olenna was dead, but her grandson Lord Willis still commanded loyalty in secret. With Highgarden's gold coffers sealed by the crown, whispers said discontent festered along the Mander. Margaery convened a council beside Jon, Davos, Sansa, Tormund, Brienne, and Maester Wolkan. By hearthlight they studied maps, ink circles marking strongholds. "The Lannisters tighten their fist," Davos said. "But each squeeze costs them blood. The small folk tire of paying for a queen's paranoia." Sansa tapped the map. "If we march south, we risk losing the North's harvest. But if we wait, the Lannisters will feed armies on grain stolen from the Reach and Riverlands, then turn on us when snows fall." Margaery's voice carried atop them. "We need not march blindly. We have wings." Her gaze slid to Jon. "Send the dragon to each holdfast the Lannisters burn. Let the people see emerald fire guarding their granaries while Lannister gold buys only fear." "Thou," Tormund grunted approval. "A dragon's shadow speaks louder than 1,000 crows." Jon considered. Rhaegal's loyalty to him felt instinctive but untested in war, south of the Neck. Still, the image of Cersei's soldiers fleeing at the roar of dragonfire stirred something fierce within him. "We show them a protector," he agreed. "Not a conqueror. Yet." Yet. The word hung heavy. That night, Jon knelt beside a hill outside Winterfell where Rhaegal perched. Wings folded like cathedral doors. The dragon dropped his head, pupils narrowing to a slit over molten gold iris. Jon placed a gloved hand against scorching scales, mind flooding with impressions, wind rushing over broken seas, the metallic scent of distant ash. He spoke softly of roads and rivers, of fires to douse, of fields to shield from iron men in red cloaks. Rhaegal's tail thumped earth, scattering snow. When Jon mounted, awkward yet determined, the dragon launched skyward, a lurch that stole breath and filled it with icy stars. Below, Winterfell shrank to a lantern-lit jewel. Jon guided Rhaegal south, heart pounding not with fear but with raw purpose. This was no boy's dream of flight. It was the heartbeat of destiny echoing through scale and bone. Hours later, a market town near the Neck awoke to emerald fire curling across moonlit sky. Lannister outriders bolted, screaming of demon wings. Rhaegal did not burn homes. He scorched rations stacked for pillage, melted siege wagons, and carved the lion's sigil into molten slag. Then he roared, a sound that trembled cups in distant taverns, and turned north again. Word raced faster than ravens. The dragon fights for the north. Small folk whispered of a king who rode green flame, of Queen Margaery who fed orphan boys porridge in Winterfell's halls. Hope caught like tinder in dry brush. Cersei Lannister's rage arrived by raven. Thin black letters promising retribution. Jon read the message beside Margaery. She threatens to hang every Stark banner she finds, he said. Margaery's lashes lowered. A queen who rules by fear invites rebellion. Our task is to offer the choice of better rule before bloodbanks burst. Jon's jaw tightened. It may come to bursting regardless. Then let us choose where the blood spills. She replied. Plans unfurled. A marriage alliance between Lord Willis Tyrell and Alys Karstark, quietly merging Reach and North in more than name. A trade convoy along the Sunset Sea secured by Davos smuggling contacts. Ravens to Dorne promising recognition of their independence if they ceased riding the Stormlands and opened ports to Northern grain. In each maneuver, Margaery's touch was evident. Graceful, smiling, disarming. She spun silken threads of allegiance even as Jon fortified walls with stone and steel. Together, they wove a tapestry of strategy no single dagger could sever. Autumn's chill crept south sooner than it had in a century, yet hearts in the Riverlands burned hot. Villages rose against Lannister levies, emboldened by sightings of the Green Dragon. Frey towers were found gutted, their bridges collapsed under mysterious fire. Rumor claimed the direwolf, and the Rose had more dragons yet to unveil. In the Red Keep, Qyburn's little birds carried tales of unrest to Queen Cersei. She paced the painted table, nails raking wood. Euron Greyjoy offered ships. She demanded wildfire. But wildfire answered only one master: madness. And King's Landing whispered that madness had already touched her crown. Winterfell's solar glowed orange with firelight when Jon woke one night to find Margaery standing at the window, silhouette framed by snow-bright moon. She turned as he rose. I dreamed of King's Landing, she murmured. The people crowded the streets, chanting your name. You rode Rhaegal above the city, but your eyes were on me, here in the tower. I couldn't reach you. Damn. Jon crossed to her, wrapping a fur about her shoulders. Dreams are wind. Not all, she whispered. Some become prophecy, as your brother might say. He brushed hair from her cheek. If prophecy calls us south, we will ride together. She met his gaze. Swear it. I swear, he said. Voice the weight of steel meeting whetstone. Snow fell early that year. White flakes kissed Margaery's dark hair as she trained with a bow beside Lady Lyanna Mormont, both refusing to cower indoors. Jon watched from the palisade, pride swelling. The North had embraced its new queen as fiercely as it once did its wolves. When news arrived that Euron's Iron Fleet had blockaded the Mander, Jon convened his war council. Sansa unfurled a map of Blackwater Bay. Brienne reported scouts had spotted scorpions, gigantic ballistae, being forged in the bowels of the Red Keep. They prepare for dragons, Davos said. They know you'll come. Then we shan't disappoint, Margaery answered, tracing a finger along the Roserad. But we lead their eyes north, strike south. Jon raised a brow. Ain, to explain. We send word that Rhaegal will burn the fleet in the bay. Let them train every scorpion upon the water. Meanwhile, a different dragon approaches unseen. Davos coughed. A different dragon? Jon's heart skipped. He recalled the cryptic behavior of the black egg found amongst Dragonstone's rubble months ago. A shell of onyx shot with ruby veins, warm to touch even in frost. Daenerys had entrusted it to him before sailing east. She'd believed it dormant, but naught that sleeps in Dragon's stone rests forever. Margaery met his eyes. If the stories are true, that egg cracked 2 nights past. Bran felt it, in his way. The hatchling already bonds to Stark blood. Jon's breath caught between awe and disbelief. 1 dragon in his command was miracle enough. 2 might shift history's very marrow. We'll need a rider, Sansa said quietly. Another who carries our house in their veins. Jon's gaze drifted to the shadows where Arya listened, face half hidden, eyes gleaming with unspoken ferocity. She stepped forward, hand resting on Needle's hilt. Not as a lady, but as a wolf who had walked beyond death itself. Name the beast, Arya said. I'll ride. Deep beneath Winterfell, in the ancient crypts where kings watched eternity from stone thrones, Jon and Arya approached the hatchling. It coiled atop shattered egg shards, obsidian scales glistening like wet coal. Eyes, twin pools of molten garnet, fixed on them. Arya knelt, hand extended. The dragon sniffed, exhaled smoke that curled around her wrist without burning. A smile ghosted across her lips. She whispered a name as if it had always been waiting. Nightshade. Steel rang as Jon drew Longclaw. He touched the pommel, wolf head silver bright in torchlight. To Nightshade's snout, the dragon's pupils narrowed, accepting the silent pledge. 2 dragons now, bound to 2 wolves. Preparations quickened. Northern forges hammered dragon steel arrowheads. Tyrell seamstresses embroidered banners where direwolf and rose entwined around the visage of a rearing dragon. Ravens flew to the Stormlands, inviting Lord Gendry Baratheon, newly legitimized and burning with the fury of the Forge, to strike from the east against Euron's ships. As snow deepened, Rhaegal and Nightshade took flight together for the first time, their shadows dancing across the white landscapes like living night and day. Peasant children chased those shadows, laughing, believing stories once only bards dared sing. On the cusp of winter's heart, Jon stood upon Winterfell's ramparts beside Margaery, watching the dragons wheel overhead. She leaned into him, warmth a quiet promise amid swirling flurries. The realm remembers dragons as doom. Let them remember ours as deliverance instead. That depends on the ruler, Jon answered. Fire can forge or destroy. She slipped gloved fingers between his. Then let us forge. Beyond the battlements, horns sounded. The last of the banners were marshalling in the yard. Karstark, Mormont, Glover, Tyrell. Riders checked girths. Smiths doused glowing iron in snow. Their army would march at first light, bound south along the King's Road, beneath the eyes of gods old and new. Above them, 2 dragons would lend courage and terror in equal measure. Jon Snow, once a bastard of Winterfell, now husband to the South's most cunning Rose, commander of dragons, bearer of ice-forged steel, inhaled the biting air. It tasted not of dread but of sharp, exhilarating purpose. Winter had come, and with it, the dawn of fire and rose. 12 days into the march, the horizon ignited with crimson at sunset, as King's Landing's walls loomed far ahead, their red stone catching final light like lacquered blood. Camps sprang up across the Kingswood, orderly Tyrell tents beside rugged northern pavilions, the scent of cedar smoke mingling with reach lavender. Jon rode the perimeter at dusk, Rhaegal's distant roar reminding enemy scouts that sky belonged to him. Near midnight, a rider arrived, bearing the stag banner. Gendry knelt before Jon's tent. Storm's End stands with the wolf dragon. He handed Jon a broken golden lion helm, the spoils of skirmish along the Roserad. Margaery studied the dented metal, eyes sharp. Every helm we break is one less soldier for Cersei, but we must still breach black walls. Arya entered, nightshade soot still across her cheek. Walls crack. She tapped her dagger. Stone hearts do too. Jon addressed gathered captains. We strike at dawn. Rhaegal will draw Scorpion's aim along the bay. Nightshade slips inland over the city's dark alleys. While the lions tilt their heads skyward, we take the gates on the ground. Murmurs of assent swept the candlelit tent. Plans unfurled like blades. Outside, Margaery rested a hand on Jon's arm. When the walls fall, what then? Do we burn the Red Keep? Jon held her gaze. Only if resistance leaves no choice. The people are not our enemy. She nodded, resolve and mercy warring in her eyes. I will ride beside the healers. We'll open the seps for the wounded. Let the realm remember who sheltered them when lions roared. He felt fierce admiration. You risk much. So do you. She rose on tiptoe, kissed him softly. Come back alive, wolf of mine. Roses bloom only for the living. He tasted her promise as he entered the shadow beyond the tent. Toward dragons, toward war, toward history unbound. Dawn bled across Blackwater Bay, painting ships in rose gold beneath a sky of gathering storm clouds. King's Landing's bells tolled, not in celebration but in alarm. 2 dragons wheeled above the city, claws glinting, wings beating thunder. Scorpions loosed iron bolts skyward, dozens, then scores. Rhaegal's roar split the morning. He dodged in dizzying arcs, fire streaming from jaws to engulf siege towers. Below, Jon guided him with knees and will, heart thrumming like war drums. Each gout of flame shattered bolt throwers, but he spared the city's homes, scouring only battlements and artillery. Simultaneously, Nightshade plunged through low clouds, ebony forms silent as midnight. Arya leaned forward, wind whipping braids. She swept over the rooftops, talons ripping banner posts, letting the lion sigils fall. Citizens gasped, but no fire followed. Instead, the dragon's shadow directed them toward open gates where healers waited. At the Mudgate, northern infantry crashed against Lannister shields. Davos led the first wave, shield raised against arrows. Tyrell spearmen filled gaps, southern and northern voices shouting one battle cry, for the wolf and the rose. When the gate groaned, hinges melting under a focused burst of Rhaegal's flame, Jon dismounted within the churning dust. Sword drawn, Ghost bounded beside him, jaws red with battle. Quarter by quarter they advanced, claiming streets, securing wells, sparing those who laid down arms. In the Red Keep, Cersei watched green fire lick her courtyard. Her hand trembled upon a goblet of arbor red. Qyburn whispered of defeat. She struck him, wine splashing rubies across broken tiles. Yet even fury could not drown the echo of dragon wings. By midday, scorpions lay in ruins. The Iron Fleet, bottled by Gendry's black-hulled ships at the mouth of the Blackwater, listed aflame, sails collapsing like spent lungs. Smoke curled to heaven, but the city itself stood largely intact. Jon advanced up the serpentine steps, Longclaw gleaming. Behind him marched soldiers bearing the direwolf rose standard. At the throne room doors, Lannister guards hesitated, eyes wide as Nightshade's silhouette swept across stained glass windows overhead. They lowered pikes, falling to knees. Inside, the Iron Throne glimmered dully in lantern-lit haze. Cersei stood before it, crown askew, wildfire spark in her gaze. Beside her, Ser Gregor loomed like death incarnate. Jon halted at the foot of the dais. Your reign ends, Cersei. His voice carried iron. She laughed, brittle. Another wolf thinks to depose a lion. How many wolves died on these stones before? A dragon stands with this wolf, he answered. And the realm stands weary of your wars. She lifted goblet to lips. The realm craves strength. You bring only ruin. He stepped forward. Look beyond these walls. Not one home burned save yours that threatened it. Your strength was fear. Mine is purpose. Thou. Her gaze flicked past him to the shattered doors where Margaery appeared, flanked by healers carrying baskets of salves. Blood stained her skirts, but her eyes blazed calm. Cersei's face contorted. You, she spat. Rose of thorns, ever clinging to whoever plucks you. Margaery's voice was soft yet cut like glass. I cling to the living, Cersei. You embraced only ghosts, prophecies of power that bled you dry. Cersei hurled the goblet. Wine splashed across the floor. Then take your throne, usurpers. She stepped back toward a hidden stair, but Ghost leapt, fangs sinking into Ser Gregor's leg. The giant swatted, crashing pillars. Jon surged, blade flashing. Steel met black armor. Sparks flew. But Longclaw, Valyrian and true, pierced the mountain's helm. The giant fell, shaking the hall. Cersei froze, horror widening her eyes. Arya emerged from shadow, Nightshade's smoky breath curling through shattered windows behind her. The queen's knees buckled. Jon sheathed Longclaw. "Surrender, and you will stand judgment." Cersei's gaze darted toward hidden wildfire caches only she knew. Fear, sudden and sharp, eclipsed her pride. She sank to the floor, crown clattering. Outside, bells tolled again, this time not for alarm, but for change. That night, King's Landing lay silent under starlight. Fires had been quenched, wounded tended. Small folk ventured from cellars to find bread lines staffed by Tyrell cooks and northerners offering blankets. Overhead, dragons roosted upon the ruined ramparts, watchful yet still. Within the throne room, torches flickered upon iron blades. Jon stood before the throne but did not ascend. He looked to Margaery, who joined him amid petrified swords. "The throne cost too much blood," he whispered, "but perhaps it can pay it back." She rested a hand upon the raw iron. "A crown is what you make it. Together, we can hammer it into something new." He thought of Ned's ghost, of Maester Aemon's words on the wall, of the people in the streets who today dared hope. He thought of Rhaegal's roar and Nightshade's silent glide, power tethered not to conquest but to duty. Jon took Margaery's hand, felt her pulse steady and sure. "Then let us forge that crown side by side." They turned to the gathered lords, Reach and North, Stormlander and Riverlander, Dothraki bloodrider and Free City envoy, united by hunger for peace hard won. Slowly, with measured breath, Jon Snow stepped toward the seat only fire could soften, and lowered himself upon it. Margaery stood beside the throne, rose and wolf entwined, her gaze cast outward to the thousands waiting for dawn. Above the Red Keep, two dragons unfurled their wings in silence, framing the moon. And across the realm, a whisper took flight on winter's wind. "The Wolf Dragon King and the Rose Queen rule, and their reign begins with neither burn nor bale, but with hope." Night settled over King's Landing like the slow closing of a giant's hand, fingers of darkness wrapping the city in uneasy quiet. The air still bore the tang of smoke and spent flame, yet beneath it, another scent began to surface. New rain from the bay, washing ash from shattered streets. Torches lined the avenues toward the Red Keep, but many burned lower than usual, their keepers dozing upright after exhaustion's long vigil. Only the bells remained fully awake, mute now, but gleaming under sooty moonlight, as if they too waited to learn the fate of crowns and ages. Within the great hall, lamps sputtered amber over iron blades. They cast skewed shadows of three figures who stood before the throne. Jon Snow seated, Margaery Tyrell poised at his side, and Davos Seaworth bowing with the stiffness of a man, unused to ceremony even after surviving more courts than he'd ever meant to see. Behind them, Sansa Stark had arrived after days of trudging south, with a relief column, cheeks wind-burned, cloak damp with bay mist. Beside her hovered Bran, still and fathomless, eyes like milky moons in a sea of memory. Jon watched his siblings approach down the aisle once littered with lion banners. In the aftermath of victory, each footfall felt heavier than the clash of swords had only hours before. Triumph, he found, carried the weight of all consequences that must follow. Sansa's voice carried despite the hush. "The wounded are bedded in the Queen's ballroom. Healers from the Reach oversee splints and poultices. The small folk have begun ration lines at the Dragon Pit, and grain stores from the Riverlands will arrive by sunrise." She swallowed her fatigue, straightened. "The dead we separate by sigil. Every house, even Lannister, will claim its fallen." Margaery touched Sansa's hand. "The gesture matters. A mother who sees her son honored will remember who granted her mourning." Jon inclined his head. "Thank you. We ask more still. Tomorrow, see the glassblowers. I'd replace every broken window in the sept with panels showing a rose and a direwolf entwined. Let the realm watch color return." Sansa's smile was wan but real. "A labor of years, but we'll begin with one pain. At Jon's shoulder, Davos cleared his throat. Your Grace, my king, the lords gather in the antechamber. Some demand trials for Cersei at first light. Others urge swift execution. And a few. He hesitated. Wonder if you mean to claim the throne at all in name as well as seat. Jon's thumb brushed the wolf's head pommel of Longclaw. We've claimed peace, not vengeance. But the realm deserves judgment it trusts. His gaze shifted to Bran. Brother, can you see the truths hidden behind her deeds? We need proof that satisfies more than broken allegiances. Bran's lips barely moved. I can see, though what I see may unmake the hearts of those who listen. Ask, and I will speak. But choose wisely whether the realm hears all of it. Mendeso. Margaery regarded the boy who was no longer truly a boy. Some truths serve justice, others only feed chaos. We must weigh which are which. Jon rose from the throne. He had not grown comfortable upon it, and doubted he ever would. Let the lords wait until dawn. Tonight belongs to the living. Seal the gates. Post banners of truce. Any blade drawn in anger will answer to me. Davos bowed, retreating through the great bronze doors. Sansa glided after him, intent on fresh governance. Bran lingered a heartbeat, then turned, leaving only a whisper of shivering torchlight in his path. Margaery exhaled. When dawn comes, they'll press you again. Her gaze roved the hall. Iron blades jutted like frozen waves behind her husband, yet her expression steadied. Would you wish to sleep? Even a king needs dreams. He shook his head. Dreams are restless tonight. Walk with me instead. They departed through side passages secret since Maegor's day, guided by sputtering lamps. Stone stairs descended into bowels of the keep, where root-like tunnels branched into forgotten cisterns. Jon led with measured quiet until a heavy door of black oak barred their way. 2 unsullied guards saluted and unlatched the bolts. Inside crouched the cell once prepared for Grand Maester Pycelle in another age. Cersei Lannister sat on a narrow cot, hands manacled, though the chain allowed small freedom. Straw smelled of mildew. A single candle guttered on the shelf. She raised her head as they entered, lion eyes weary yet still edged by obsession. Gone were her crimson silks. She wore plain cloth the color of dust, and without a crown her hair hung loose, shot with fur strands of gray. Jon stopped beyond arm's reach. Margaery remained beside him, slim and composed as a drawn rapier. Silence thickened until Cersei's laugh, soft as a rusted hinge, broke it. The Wolf King and the Rose Queen. Her voice rasped from tears unshed. Do you come seeking my blessing? We come offering choice, Jon replied. Stand trial or take the black. The North remembers mercy, even when lions forget. Cersei's smile split with bitterness. Mercy. The wall is gone. Shattered by the dead, your folly unleashed. Where shall I serve my watch? Then Derwine. Jon's jaw tightened. Memory of ice dragons and shattered gatehouses pulsed behind his scars. The Night's Watch rebuilds even now. Stone by stone, man by man, you dress in black. Serve without wine or power, and breathe your final years among ghosts. She tilted her head. A cage of ice or gallows of politics. Both end in death. Margaery stepped forward. One ends in redemption. Your children would wish you to choose dignity over spite. Them? For an instant, pain flickered like lightning behind Cersei's eyes, names unspoken, faces lost. Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen. Then bitterness flooded back. Do not speak of my children, Tyrell Witch. You poisoned my Joffrey with your sly smiles. If I must meet them in death, better by fire and fury than in rags. Margaery's gaze did not waver. I will not be drawn into old feuds. The choice is yours. We return at dawn. They departed without further word. Behind them, Cersei's laughter turned brittle, dissolving into ragged breaths that echoed down cold halls. Near the dragon pit, Rhaegal perched upon a half-collapsed arch, wings folded into ragged shadows. Fires burned low in braziers around him. Dothraki guards kept respectful distance. awed by the beast whose flames had spared their horses. Across the rubble yard, Nightshade dozed atop a broken dome, black coils gleaming whenever lightning flickered far seaward. The dragon's breathing rose and fell like bellows from two massive forges, shaping the night's hush. Arya clambered over fallen columns, boots light. She carried a saddle stitched in Winterfell's leathers, one she had crafted herself under the watch of the unsullied quartermaster, who knew more of cutting meat than tanning hides but offered strong hands nonetheless. She paused beneath Nightshade's snout, setting a hand against warm scale. "Easy, Shadow," she whispered. Nightshade's eyelids opened, red ember eyes regarding her before closing again. Arya slung the saddle over slender shoulders. At 14 feet long now, the young dragon grew daily, but his ridges still fit the pattern she measured. She set about testing straps. Rhino hide from the Summer Islands, brass rings purchased by Tyrell coin, buckles forged under Gendry's hammer. Each clasp clicked, each strap snugged. Nightshade flicked his tail but permitted the fussing, content with Arya's voice crooning half-remembered lullabies. When done, she stepped back, satisfied. "You'll fly tomorrow," she murmured. "Not to burn, but to guard. Remember that. We guard those who can't guard themselves." "Men?" "No." Behind her, footsteps approached. Gendry carried a lantern and a sealed wine flask. "Late to be sewing, milady." She shot him a look. "Don't call me milady." He grinned. "Abed's heart." He set the lantern on a block of marble, offered the flask. "Blackberry wine, Tyrell casks." "And sweet, but it warms." Arya accepted, sipped. The wine coated her throat like sunlight sliding across a blade, quick to heat the stomach. "Thank you." Gendry's eyes lingered on the dragon. "When I swing a hammer, I think I feel the steel breathing. But this breathes for real." He shook his head. "Respect plain." Arya looked at him through flickering light. "When dawn comes, the city may rise against us or welcome us. Stay by the healers, Gendry. They'll need strong arms." He lifted a brow. "And leave you alone in the sky." "I won't be alone. Nightshade's enough. And if one of those scorpion bolts finds you," she smirked, "then you'll forge me a new chestplate, one wider than the hole they leave." He laughed, but worry remained in the shadows of his eyes. He hesitated, then pressed something into her palm. A ring of iron, rough-hewn, shaped like a direwolf chasing a stag. Made from a nail pulled from the old Baratheon warhammer rack in the armory. "Keep it. For luck." Arya studied the ring. The symbol made her throat tighten in ways no blade ever had. She slipped it onto a leather thong, tied it about her neck. "Thank you. But you keep watch over yourself. If the city hates new rulers, they might hate those who help us even more." Gendry shrugged. Never did have friends among goldcloaks. Blacksmiths belong to smoke, not velvet. He looked toward the bay. "Stormbreakers sail at dawn. If Cersei's loyalists think to flee by sea, they'll find our nets." Arya nodded, then glanced skyward where clouds parted to reveal a scattering of stars. "Get some rest." "You too, Arya." He squeezed her shoulder once and departed through toppled arches, lantern bobbing like a distant star. Arya touched the ring again, then turned her attention to Nightshade's flanks, tracing patterns of ivory flecks in dark scale. Somewhere beyond the city, wolves howled faintly, carried on wind down from Maiden's forests, lost to roads. She remembered her father's words once spoken near these very stones, "When the snows fall and the white winds blow." The rest of the phrase lived in her blood. Dawn filtered through cracked shutters of the Tower of the Hand, where Jon made his bed since claiming the keep. Sleep had come in fitful waves, stabbed by unsought memories. Sam's honest tears on the wall. Lord Commander Mormont's corpse burning. Ygritte's arrow striking air yet never landing anymore. He rose before the sun's full flush, dressing in plain leather and wool, leaving a crown of black steel untouched on the bedside chest. He fastened a white cloak, trimmed in gray wolf fur, gift of Mormont women. then stepped to the balcony. King's Landing slowly stirred below. Poultry sellers emerged onto singed lanes, scorched but not raised. Smoke trickles from chimneys. Fishmongers hauled nets bright with silver morning catch. Bells, unsummoned, rang once. Children tested their peal, giggling under watchful mothers. Life, fragile but persistent. Jon felt the hush before battle, but also something new. The hush before possibility. He inhaled and exhaled, hoping quiet might fill the holes winter had carved through him. Then he turned toward council chambers where lords awaited. Within, long tables bore fresh parchment maps, newly hung banners, wolf and rose, draped stone pillars. At the head, Davos and Sansa attended. To their right, Lord Willis Tyrell sat in wheeled chair, wounded leg cushioned by embroidered pillow. Beside him stood Lady Lyanna Mormont, fierce eyes daring dissent. On the opposite flank, Jan Royce represented Vale forces, and Lord Edmure Tully leaned on a cane, the ghost of Riverrun in his gaze. A single chair stood empty for Dorne. Messengers still rode hard across the Boneway. Jon entered. Silence rippled. He sat at the foot, refusing the raised dais. We meet to decide the fate of the former queen, and to name offices that must rebuild what war has broken. Royce cleared his throat. Many within the guilds call for Cersei's head. They say mercy breeds doubt. Lyanna's young voice rang. Fear is the lion's coin. We pay in peace instead. Show them we, for once, keep vows of restraint. Mendru and she. Willis nodded, fingers tracing the carved arm of his chair. Let the trial prove she ruled through cruelty. Record each account with ink so black the pages weep. Then judgment comes from realm, not rumor. Edmure sighed. Men lost families to her wildfire. The Tullys will not oppose lenience, but the rage of small folk must be tended like a rash before it festers. Margaery arrived then, cloak of pale green sweeping, gold hair lit by morning's glow. She carried a sheaf of petitions, bowing to the assembly. Great lords, last night we gathered testimony from bakers who saw their ovens seized, from sparrows tortured after the sept fell. In 3 days' time, we can prepare full records. Jon nodded. Then on the 4th day, Cersei Lannister stands before a tribunal of chosen judges. 1 lord each from Reach, North, Riverlands, Vale, Dorne, and Stormlands. No lions. House loyalty clouds truth. Lyanna's brow furrowed. If she refuses trial? Jon's voice hardened. Then she chooses the wall, or the king's justice. Murmurs buzzed, but none voiced dissent. Davos lifted a parchment. Another matter. Grain stores. The crown's vault is near empty. Tyrell coffers hold coin, but we must restore trust by returning seized lands to river lords. A tithe of Reach gold can fund bridges and mills. Willis smiled thinly. Highgarden will contribute. A realm starved buys neither roses nor loyalty. Jon spread hands over the table. Then we begin fields before fancy. He lifted eyes to Margaery, who met them with calm purpose. Tomorrow we ride to Flea Bottom together. The people must see their rulers among them. Jan Royce tapped a knuckle. Security. Shall be dragons, Arya said, appearing in doorway, dark leathers creaking. Nightshade circles above. Rhaegal can graze the bay. She tossed a satchel to Davos. Catlins of spice. Medicine. From Volantine traders now protected by my darting shadow. A grin flashed. Most honest trade this city's seen in years. Davos chuckled, even as he counted vials. 7 blessed the Black Wings then. Business continued. Appointment of a small council. Davos named hand, until a better scholar or statesman emerged. Sansa accepted mistress of grain and roads. Willis appointed master of coin. Arya refused any title, choosing instead to serve as eye and shadow, reporting wrongs from rooftops. Bran, unreachable by oaths of office, would be called Oracle, seldom in council but beyond all. As discussion turned to ravens for Dorne, Jon's thoughts drifted. Each voice in the room carried weight, but together they sounded like seeds hitting soil, tiny preludes to forests. He considered what the forest might look like in 10 years. Trade caravans spanning the King's Road unmolested. Bards singing of rose-wolf courts. Dragons shepherding storms rather than rending sky. But seeds demanded patience far beyond the hurry of war. When the council ended, sunlight dappled city squares. Jon and Margaery rode side by side through the Gate of the Gods. Ghosts trotted ahead, children daring to dart forth and touch white fur before squealing back. Guards clutched spears but did not shove. Margaery insisted kindness build ramparts stronger than stone. Flea Bottom smelled of garlic, spilled ale, and 1,000 unwashed secrets. Its crooked alleys might swallow a queen whole. But here Margaery dismounted, handing reins to a stableboy so small, he disappeared behind Rhaegal's casting shadow overhead. She lifted him and walked mud-strewn lanes, greeting weavers, tasting stew from cauldrons, laughing when a baker, awestruck, offered burnt bread. Jon followed, speaking sparse but sturdy words of promise, making no vow he could not keep. They paused at an orphanage gutted during Euron's last raid. The matron bowed. No one came, not even septons. "I lost half my girls." Her voice cracked. Margaery clasped the woman's hands. "You'll lose no more. We rebuild this roof before the palace windows." She turned to Jon. "Tyrell carpenters will start at once. Stark masons will finish," Jon said. "And from my own purse, a year's supply of wood and oil to keep children warm." He knelt to a girl clutching a wooden wolf carved long ago by some unknown hand. "What is your name?" "Sira." The child whispered. "Sira, this city is yours more than any king's. Guard its stones. When you're grown, teach others to guard them too." He pressed a silver stag into her palm. Her eyes widened as though the coin were the moon. Above, Rhaegal swept low, sending dust swirling. Nightshade's silhouette chased the green dragon like living dusk. Citizens craned necks, some gasping, many smiling despite fear. Jon studied their faces, caution, hope, disbelief braided together. Margaery leaned close. "They will believe when years pass without betrayal. May we live long enough to prove it." He took her hand. That night, Arya slipped from the keep, dressed as a stableboy, scouting taverns. Rumors traveled fast. In the Candlewick brothel, she heard sailors claim the new king blessed mummers to fill stages again. At Ragman's harbor, smugglers grumbled that coin passed without bribes now. Not worth the risk. East in Cobbler's Square, sparrows knelt to pray not for deliverance but for thanks. She smiled, letting each rumor engrave itself like runes on memory. Barometer of change. On her return, she scaled a tower wall rather than use gates. High above, Nightshades soared slow circles around the keep, wings rippling purple-black in moonbeam glimmer. Arya laughed. She could sense the dragon's smug pride echoing her own. She whistled, and Nightshade dove. Wind scything as talons raked the air 10 paces overhead before rising again. The thrill split her lungs. For a moment, she felt younger than when she'd left Winterfell before war's first screech. Inside, she found Sansa reading by lamplight. Papers strewn, logbooks tallied. Lines of figures traced supply wagons on parchment. Sansa raised bleary eyes. "Trouble?" Arya asked. "Only numbers. Grain, nails, timber. The real wars." She rubbed her temples. "I thought once that songs ended happily. It turns out happy endings are made of debts and decimal columns." Arya sat beside her. "You're the best we have at that battle. You always have been." Sansa's gaze softened. "And you ride darkness. We each keep a piece of father alive." She closed the ledger. "Come. A sister deserves bread and broth." Together they crossed silent halls to the kitchens. Flames flickered under blackened pots. They shared crust bread dipped in onion soup. Steam fogged the edges of night. For the first time in years, they ate without fear that walls would fall before dawn. 3 days passed. Rain swept ash from rooftops, filled cisterns, and coaxed sweet rot from piles of grapes left half-crushed under carts. Artisans reopened workshops. City watch. Gold cloaks once. Now cloaks dyed gray. Patrolled not for rebels, but for looters. At gatehouses, refugees trickled in. Potters from the Reach. Blacksmiths from the Crownlands. Small folk from Stormland's villages raised by Euron's men. All sought protection under new dragons. Jon walked the walls each dawn. From parapets he saw skeletons of burned ships bobbing in the bay. He ordered them hauled and melted to nails for rebuilding. The harbor board protested loss of salvage rights. Jon replied salvage rights belonged to widows first. Davos smiled crookedly at that. Margaery organized a festival of mending. Seamstresses sewing banners, beggars earning bread by collecting rubble. Children planting rose bushes where lion statues once glared. She commissioned traveling minstrels to compose ballads of the autumn dragon. Regal who burned iron fear but spared wooden homes. Nightshade whose midnight wings shielded candle flames. Couched in rhyme, terror became wonder. Yet beyond walls, forces still gathered. In Casterly Rock, Sir Lancel's cousin Sir Davin raised banners, calling vassals to free their Lion Queen. In Old Town, a faction of archmaesters questioned legitimacy of a king who rose from the dead. Across narrow seas, the Golden Company weighed offers from exiled victuallers. Peace, Jon realized, would be fought for every morning. On the eve before Cersei's trial, Bran sat in the godswood transplanted from Winterfell centuries ago. Red leaves dripped dew, reflecting candle sky. Jon approached the bench where Bran waited, wheels of his chair half buried in moss. "Brother," Jon said. Bran's eyes, pale as dawn fog, focused on a point both near and infinitely far. "You doubt the path," he murmured. "I doubt the cost." Jon crouched, leaves crunching. If the trial ends in blood, vengeance breeds vengeance. Some cycles break only when truth bears itself. Bran's voice changed, deepened with memory's weight. "Cersei ordered wildfire, placed beneath sceptry tunnels long before war. I saw children hauling jars under lash of her guards. If this truth comes to light, those mothers who lost sons will know she murdered as willingly as any butcher in Flea Bottom. They will not thirst for your crown after, only for future safe." Jon closed his eyes. "Once I fled from my name. Now it stands taller than any wall. Guide me, Bran. What would father say?" "Nenderwandar." Bran's head tilted. A breath later, his words echoed Eddard Stark's timbre, so perfectly Jon felt northern wind on his face. Justice must not be swift, only sure. Jon opened his eyes. Bran's own had returned to present moment. Jon nodded, squeezed his shoulder, and rose. "Then sure it shall be." Thousands gathered in the courtyard below the throne room the following dawn. Clouds hung low, threatening rain again, but banners of wolf and rose fluttered bright. A dais rose from hastily carpentered planks. Jon stood at its center, cloak billowing. Margaery sat to one side among judges. Willis Tyrell, Sansa Stark, Jon Royce, Edmure Tully, Lady Nym of the Sand Snakes representing Dorne, and Davos Seaworth presiding as Hand. Cersei emerged, escorted by Unsullied. She walked unaided, chin high despite chain-tugging wrists. Murmurs rippled, neither cheers nor jeers. Curiosity tinged with remembered terror. Arya observed from rooftop, nightshade above. Rhaegal perched on the outer wall facing the bay, eyes watching crowds. Davos opened proceedings. "By will of the realm, we sit in judgment of Cersei of House Lannister." Cersei's voice rang. "I stand accused by usurpers riding stolen dragons." Davos read charges: regicide, wildfire massacre, orchestration of sept explosion, murder of smallfolk refugees, extortion, and breach of sacred hospitality. Each charge roared through the crowd like surf. Bran wheeled forward, white eyes reflecting overcast sky. He spoke softly, yet his words carried unnatural resonance. "I am Brandon Stark, who sees beyond sight. I bear witness to Cersei's deeds." He recounted visions. Children whipped beneath Red Keep. Qyburn mixing wildfire, Cersei signing orders while sipping wine. His voice did not shake. Emotion bled only in the audience, gasps mingling with wails. Cersei laughed once the visions ended. You trust phantom tales of a cripple who stares at trees. Prove them. Bran replied simply, call Sir Robert Strong. Silence followed. Everyone knew the mountain lay dead. Cersei's lips trembled. Her eyes darted, realizing cracks forming in her armor. But pride brewed defiance. Say your piece, Stark boy. The rabble will always believe a conjurer. Then, Davos gestured, and 3 former Red Keep servants stepped forth. A cook who hid beneath scullery stairs when wildfire barrels rolled by. A scribe who penned orders under threat. A stable hand who helped bury burned sparrows. Their tales matched Bran's vision, independent yet identical. The crowd murmured crescendo. Judges conferred. Willis Tyrell spoke first. Guilt proven on all counts. Jon Royce concurred. Sansa's voice trembled but firmed. Aye. Edmure, eyes moist, whispered. Aye. Lady Nym flicked a dagger tip across her palm. Aye. Davos closed. Verdict unanimous. Jon stood. Sentence must weigh justice against mercy. He faced Cersei. Will you take the black and live your remaining days in service beyond the rebuilt wall? Cersei's eyes glinted. For a moment he thought she might accept, perhaps to plot anew. But she spat. I will not rot amongst crows. Strike me down, king, and prove yourself no different than I. Jon's heart sank. He glanced to Margaery. Her face calm, eyes sorrowful. Crowd silence expanded. He spoke, voice low but firm. Then by judgment of this council and consent of the realm, I sentence you to death, not by flame nor song of pain, but by the clean stroke worthy of a house once proud. Guards guided Cersei to the block placed before the dais. She knelt, hair falling forward. Jon drew Longclaw. Its Valyrian steel shimmered. He inhaled winter air that lived only in memory now. Raised the sword. And in that instant, Cersei lifted her eyes to watch the blade. No fear remained, only longing for children lost beyond her reach. Jon met that gaze and whispered a word only she heard. Forgiven, though not absolved. Then steel fell, swift, ending the last lioness. As hush shattered into a wave of murmurs, Jon cleaned the blade on cloth, returned it to scabbard. Sansa covered her mouth. Tears slid but she did not look away. Margaery closed her eyes for 3 breaths, then opened them to the new world ahead. Jon addressed the crowd. Justice weighs heavy. Let none seek further blood. The realm has debts to the dead. Our task is to repay them with peace. Some cheered, others bowed heads, a few wept. But no riot sparked. Bells tolled slow. A peal not of victory nor mourning. An echo resolving into acceptance. That night rain returned, washing blood from stones. Jon walked ramparts alone until footsteps joined. Tyrion Lannister, unshaven, face drawn. He had arrived in secret hours earlier, carried by a smuggler's boat. He stood beside Jon, staring into rain. My sister's dead, Tyrion said, voice hollow. You swung the sword. I asked once to be the monster's end. But perhaps mercy lay in your hand, not mine. Jon remained silent. Tyrion continued. I loved her, hated her, feared her, spent a lifetime climbing out from beneath her shadow. Now she's gone, and still I'm beneath it. Strange. Jon turned. You came to take vengeance? Truthfully? I came to witness. I owe her that. Tyrion sighed. But the realm owes itself more. I offer counsel. Gods know you need a crooked mind to check your straight one. Jon allowed a faint smile. Serve as master of whisperers then, under Margaery's oversight. Tyrion bowed, rain dripping from tangled hair. To new beginnings. He extracted a flask, handed it over. Jon drank. Sour red stung but warmed. Lightning slashed clouds. Thunder rolled. Rhaegal answered with a roar that vibrated beneath their boots. Nightshade replied in a lower register. 2 notes in a song forging through storm. Weeks turned to months. Summer's last warmth gave way to crisp harvest nights. Fields burned by war sprouted green under relentless planting. The riverlands' grain barges ran unmolested down Blackwater Rush. Minstrels once driven to thievery returned to play in inns where small folk danced again. Atop the Iron Throne, reshaped, smiths removed barbs that pierced cedars, filed twisted blades into smooth curves. Jon held open court, but thrice weekly, preferring to ride circuits of the city, consult craftsmen, visit dungeons and breweries alike. He dressed plain, silver wolf brooch, the only regal sign, and children recognized him more by ghost padding at his heel. Margaery oversaw the Queen's Gardens near Aegon's High Hill, transforming rubble slopes into terraces of lavender and rose that scented city breezes. She founded orphan schools where Fleabottom's littlest learned letters and numbers and songs of old Nan's tales. Each pupil received a wooden token carved as direwolf or rose. Many tucked them into pockets like precious jewels. Sansa orchestrated grain caravans north, forging warehouses along the King's Road. She oversaw a new minted coin stamped with Wolfrose sigil, wolf roses. The small folk named them. Wider than stag pieces, their edges smooth to discourage clipping. Merchants accepted them eagerly. Wealth trickled into broken neighborhoods. Arya and Gendry flew nightshade over coastal waters, hunting pirate ships that preyed on Taroshi traders. They returned with spoils donated to city hospitals. Some nights she perched on domes with the dragon curled like a cat, watching lanterns float downriver. Festivals of light begun by orphanage children, lights carrying wishes to the sea. Bran rarely emerged except to speak truths needed, predicting storms, advising on ancient laws. He allowed ravens to roost upon parapets where courtiers might scream, but came to accept feathers falling like confetti. Davos labored over taxes, discovering honesty could harvest more gold than graft ever had. He established a guild of harbor pilots, taught them signals with lantern and bell, preventing wrecks on rocks that once lined Rhaegar's last battlefield. Willis built iron roads through the Reach, enabling wagons to roll where ruts once devoured wheels. He visited twice yearly, each journey easier than the last. Tyrion revived the city's underground waterworks, using dwarven tunnels now patrolled by former sparrows. He hosted debates in the Red Keep Library, inviting archmaesters to spar mines instead of swords. Knowledge, he preached, was gold that minted itself. Through all, Rhaegal and Nightshade served as living heraldic beasts, patrolling skies. When plague threatened from the east, they scorched incoming rat-infested ships before they docked. When drought withered Crownland's orchards, Jon guided Rhaegal high into thunderclouds, stirring currents until rain burst free. But threats brewed beyond seas. Word came that Golden Company accepted coin from Sir Davin Lannister, readying invasion. Old Town whispered of a faith militant resurgence under a new High Septon, preaching that dragons herald apocalypse. In the shadow of Slaver's Bay, Yunkish slavers plotted to reclaim lost fortunes. Peace, Jon knew, remained as fragile as egg under hoof. One autumn dawn, Jon stood by the repaired and painted Blackwater parapet with Margaery. Sunrise gilded waters, gulls shrieked. Margaery leaned into him. "Will we ever call this peace enough?" she asked. "Peace isn't a destination," he said. "It's a road, and we travel it as far as our legs hold." He brushed her cheek. "I lose hope some days. Then I see a child walk unafraid where battle once raged. That keeps me moving." "Belle." She smiled, sunlight catching her hair. "Then may our legs be strong." Behind them, bells rang. A new sequence, bright and swift. Jon listened. "That's the pattern for Harvest Feast." Margaery grinned. "Come then, Wolf. Time to praise farmers more than fighters." They turned toward inner yards where tables laden with loaves awaited. As they descended steps, the clamor of city life rose. Hammer on anvil, wool sellers' cries, laughter echoing through narrow stone canyons. It sounded not like war's chaos, but like a heart rebuilt, beating. Jon threaded fingers through hers, pulling her gently into the crowds. Somewhere above, Rhaegal's silhouette glided, wings catching dawn. Nightshade darted playful loops beneath, like a pup chasing parent. Citizens paused to look up but did not cower. They waved. Margaery squeezed his hand, Dragons, wolves, and roses? She murmured. What a garden we cultivate. A wild one. He smiled. But ours. They stepped into sunlight, vanishing for a moment in the sea of people. 2 lives among thousands. Each heartbeat part of a story still growing. Word by word, stone by stone. Piece by hard-won piece, toward whatever chapter lay beyond the next dawn's light. Oh, Ka. The harvest feast swelled like a living tide through the outer bailey of the Red Keep. Candle lanterns bobbed from newly strung hemp lines, their colored glass casting wandering auroras over faces browned by fieldwork and blanched by winter's ghosts. Fisherwives ladled chowder into rough clay bowls. Tyrell vintners uncorked casks of pale gold verjuice that fizzed over rims. A Dornish troupe hammered hand drums, while a fiddler from White Harbor threaded a lilting reel that coaxed weary heels into stumbling joy. It was the first true festival King's Landing had known since the bells of surrender tolled, and its heart beat loud enough to drown the bay's restless hush. Jon sat on a low bench between a cooper and a septa, who smelled faintly of beeswax and ink. He shared their trencher, rye bread hollowed and filled with venison stew. Eating with a carved ash spoon, a mute boy presented him as thanks for roof repairs in Pisswater Bend. Ghost lay at his feet, muzzle resting on crossed paws, amber eyes drifting closed each time a child's sticky hand dared brush his fur. No sword belt cinched Jon's hips tonight. Longclaw slumbered in its oiled sheath by his bedside, and the absence of steel felt strange and tender, like walking barefoot after seasons in Greaves. Across the throng, Margaery moved as easily as sunlight across river water. She stopped at each circle. Grape pickers from the Reach. Iron Islanders hired to dredge harbor wrecks. Summer Islanders who baked spice cakes hot enough to make even Dornishmen sweat. And sprinkled laughter like seed grain. Jon watched her shoulders loosen each time a harpist plucked a familiar tune from Highgarden. She no longer wore the jade gown of coronation, but a simple wool dress dyed deep winter green, trimmed with white wolf stitching at collar and cuffs. The garment had been Sansa's gift. The union it signified was plain, unpretentious, strong. The music shifted into a slower measure, a honey-soft ballad of Nymeria's 1,000 ships. Couples found each other's arms despite pickled toes and calloused palms. Jon wiped stew from his beard with the hem of his sleeve. The cooper beside him nudged with an elbow. "Go on, your grace," he rasped around cider breath. "A wife's waiting." Jon smiled awkward thanks. Rose whistled Ghost to keep watch and threaded into the spinning ring of dancers. Margaery saw him approach and opened her hands. An invitation rather than command. They folded together. Her palms were warm despite the chill creeping from stone walls. The tune lapped like gentle tide. Jon's steps lacked the polished cadence of court, but Margaery matched him with forgiving sway. Guiding without leading. Around them peasants and nobles swirled alike. And for the span of 3 verses no one bowed, no one begged, no one schemed. There was only the rhythm of shared harvest under shared sky. When the final chord faded, applause crackled. Jon kissed Margaery's brow. Still a strange freedom after years of self-denial. And she smiled up at him with eyes more green than Tyrell jade. "Your feet learn quick, my wolf. Still clumsy." He glanced downward at scuffed boots. "But I'll chase the tune until I master it." She squeezed his hand. "Then keep chasing." A cheer rippled near the gate, where a caravan fresh from the riverlands unloaded cloth bowls and sacks of barley. Sansa oversaw inventory, quill scratching while torchlight cast auburn hair into copper flame. Arya balanced atop a cartwheel, throwing an apple in lazy arcs for a dog to leap and catch. Tyrion shared a cigarillo with Gendry near a forge cart, whose small bellows glowed ember hot. They debated or impurities, in slurred but animated tongues. Davos haggled with a Mirish spice merchant for saffron at half cost. The merchant protested until Davos whispered of tariff exemptions the man could expect next quarter. Bran was absent, his body at least. He sat atop the Weirwood Hill beyond the dragon pit most nights, lungs filling with leaf scent, while mind unraveled the weft of raven flight and ocean swells. Though some whispered of sorcery, the fishermen whose nets Bran once warned to pull in early, saving 15 men from a sudden squall. spoke louder of miracle. Later, under rising moon, when tables had thinned and a hush of contented weariness settled, a horn blast shivered through the feasting yard. 3 notes. Sharp, sharp, drawn out. City watch signal for an incoming messenger under night flag. Jon's shoulders tensed. Ghost growled, hackles lifting. He and Margaery exchanged a glance and slipped through milling benches toward the gate. A rider clattered into torchlight. Dust-cloaked, breastplate dented at the shoulder. Gold cloak torn free. Steam puffed from lathered charger nostrils. He dismounted, knelt. Sir Simon Staunton, your graces, out of Bitterbridge. Urgent ravens were felled. I rode under darkness. Jon signaled water be brought. Rise, Sir Simon. Speak. The knight's voice rasped raw. Golden Company banners over the shields. They seized Greenshield at dawn 2 days past. 2,000 sellswords, 4 war galleys, led by General Miles, Toyn Dodai. Lord Rowan's levies crumble. Bah! Murmurs swarmed among onlookers. Margaery's jaw set. The shields guard the mouth of the mander. If they hold Greenshield, they choke the Reach's main grain channel, and our food to feed Crown lands this winter. Jon's gaze swung northward, though stone blocked sight. How did they bypass our western patrols? Disguised as Bravosi traders. Their hulls hid rams beneath painted hulls. Once inside the Isle's lee, they hoisted black and gold. Then, Tyrion hurried forth, one brow arched. And the Arbor fleet? Caught in port by false truce. Rumor says a Lannister envoy promised trade privileges for House Redwine's wine if they remained anchored for inspection. Redwine gulls took the bait. Gendry whistled a curse. Davin Lannister's gold at work. Jon turned to Davos, who had arrived breathless. Prepare war council at dawn. We sail with the tide. Davos saluted. Your grace. Margaery faced Jon beneath lantern glow. The Reach seed stores half the realm. If the Golden Company holds those isles through winter, starvation will breed rebellion faster than fear returns. Jon nodded. We will not let them. She gripped his forearm. I ride with you. He hesitated, love and worry circling like hawks, but saw unyielding woe beneath her calm. Very well. You command the grain convoys. I lead the blades. She kissed the back of his hand once, then strode away, already summoning stewards. The harvest feast ended not in revelry, but orderly dispersal. Yet despite urgency, panic did not take root. The people had seen dragons overhead and justice in courts, and believed in the wolf rose shield. They banked fires, stacked benches, and went to rest, trusting morning to bring both threat and answer. Before sunrise, War Council assembled in the newly restored Tower of Maegor. A round chamber with fresh oak beams and windows glazed against sea spray. A map of the Mander estuary lay on the central table, weighted by stones shaped as direwolf, rose, guidant, and spear. Jon stood in leather campaign gear, black cloak pinned with wolf rose brooch. Davos beside him traced shipping lanes with calloused finger. To reach Greenshield, Davos said. We sail south past Duskendale, round Massey's Hook, then hug coast beyond Rainwood. With favorable wind, 3 days, 4 with calm. Tyrion perched on a stool, cross-referencing trade manifests. Reports suggest only 4 galleys with the Golden Company. But sellswords rarely bet everything. Expect more waiting beyond horizon. Willis Tyrell, wheeled in overnight through King's Road luminous dust, studied the map. North Sea. Greenshield's shores lack deep harbor. Large cogs must anchor offshore. War horses cannot disembark fast. That limits Toyn's reinforcement speed. Jon placed the Dragonstone onto Greenshield. Rhaegal will strike from sky. Nightshade Harry flanks at dusk. Arya, you and Gendry lead raids to sabotage siege engines before main assault. Arya grinned like a knife drawn from oil. Sansa, arms folded in thick blue shawl, spoke next. While armies sail, I will remain to supervise city granaries and quell rumor. But we must communicate victories quickly. Small folks' stomachs twist with each whispered fear of famine. Then? Tyrion nodded. I'll craft broadsheets. Wolves reclaim the shield, printed before second dawn after your landing. Margaery entered, cloak dripping dew. Grain caravans depart sunset along Roserad. Old Town has volunteered barge escorts. She met Joan's eyes. Samwell Tarly sends word. The Citadel stands ready to produce satchels of wildfire suppressant, concocted from chalk dust and seawater salts. He worries Toyne recruited pyromancers. Jon felt heat ignite at mention of Sam's name. Comfort and loyalty. He touched the map once more. We leave at noon. Davos. Ready Black Betha and her sister ships. Lord Willis commands household guard from High Garden to ride for Torrengate and secure upriver approach. We cut the snake's head and free the grain. No one disputed. The fleet set sail under gray midday. Tide surged around hulls painted with new Wolfrose standard. Wind snapped fresh canvas. Rhaegal launched from Dragon Pit Spire, wings beating sea air into spirals. Nightshade leapt after, obsidian scales rippling violet. Harbor folk gathered along piers, waving kerchiefs, tossing sprigs of heather for luck. Jon stood at prow of Black Betha Sea, newer than her namesake lost at Blackwater, breathing brine and tar. Longclaw belted once more. Davos gripped the wheel, knuckles scar-tight. Gendry commanded Stormrunner, a lean galley forged from cypress beams with bronze ram gleaming. Arya perched on its mast, hair streaming like a black pennon. Tyrion sailed aboard Quill's Folly to act as envoy if parley arose. 5 Dornish Dromans escorted, their triangular sails emblazoned with red suns. This small armada cut waves southward, gulls trailing. Evening painted the sky bruised lavender. Rhaegal soared ahead, scouting cloudbanks. Nightshade swooped low, hunting the spray for tuna, and occasionally diving, ripples exploding when talons surfaced clutching silver thrashers devoured mid-flight. On deck, crewmen cheered each catch. Fear melted beneath wonder. 3 days later, as Davos predicted, the armada approached the estuary, where mander spilled into shimmering blue. Dawnlight glinted off miles of reed beds and tidal flats. But the shores of Greenshield itself, once lush with cedar groves, now smoldered. Smoke pillars ascended. Charred trunks resembled black fangs. Farther inland, a gilt and black banner flapped from a half-collapsed watchtower. Crowned skull with sword wings, the Golden Company's emblem. From the quarterdeck, Jon surveyed scorpion towers erected along cliffs. They worked quickly. Davos spat over rail. Sells words pay local fishers in coin to haul timbers. And fear buys whatever gold cannot. Through spyglass, Tyrion noted longboats ferrying crates from anchored galleys. See the red wax? Those are Lysine firepots. Pyromancers indeed. Lannisters. Jon lowered glass. Then we strike, before more land. He signaled. Sailors beat drums, a pattern the dragons knew. Rhaegal banked, roaring thunder. Nightshade dove behind. Black Betha II lunged ahead, ram cutting swells. Davos shouted orders. Ballistae crews primed their bolts with damp wool wadding, soaked in saltwater slurry. Sam's suppressant mixture to smother firepots before impact. Stormrunner flanked port side, Gendry bellowing cadence. Oars dipped like synchronized talons. The first enemy galley, Fury of Mar, swung broadside to unleash catapults. Green flame arced but sputtered mid-air when Davos bolts burst them prematurely. Chalk dust blanketing sparks into gutters of steam. Surprised Sellsword gunports gaped. Before they reloaded, Rhaegal descended, exhaling pillar of emerald fire that traced the deck from stem to stern with surgical precision. Tarred ropes sang. Splitting. Sails ignited. Men leapt screaming into churning surf that hissed under the heat. At cliff base, scorpions turned skyward. Iron quarrels whistled. Rhaegal veered, one bolt grazing his forearm scale. But glancing away, Nightshade answered from behind, spitting a narrower jet of indigo flame that melted scorpion arms to slag. Arya piloted maneuvers by lean of torso and touch of knees, looping between tower spires until their wood frames smoldered and collapsed in roaring cascades. On shore, Golden Company pikemen formed shield walls among dune grass. Trumpets blared commands in Kiskari tongue, a relic of ancient training. But the Sellswords had never faced dragonfire. Courage wavered every time a shadow passed overhead. Their captain, Miles Toyne, a tall, hardened veteran whose ancestors once founded the company, rode a chestnut destrier near the makeshift fort. He drew curved arak forged in Qohor, motioning archers forward. Jon signaled boats. Northmen and Tyrell men leapt into surf, wading knee-deep to beachhead. Shields overlapped. Spears bristled. Davos led a vanguard of Stormlanders, black shipbreaker bay sigils flapping. Sandlom sucked boots, but hearts held firm. Ghost bounded beside Jon, fur soaked but eyes aflame. They advanced. Arrow volleys hissed. Water churned. Northern shields blocked, though some men fell. Behind the lines, Tyrion shouted dwarfish curses at crew fumbling a light trebuchet onto a barge. Gendry raised hammer, roared for Storm's End, and charged first, swinging. Clash on the beach erupted. Steel rang against sellsword spears. Sand flew, stained red. Jon pushed forward, Longclaw's Valyrian edge sliding through plate like silk. He fought with measured ferocity. No flourish, only purpose. Each enemy who yielded, he spared. Those who held line found steel at throat. Toyne saw Jon, recognizing the black cloak. He spurred through fray. Arak raised high. Their horses crashed, hooves spraying. Jon parried first stroke, sparks showering dotting. They circled, breath clouds mingling. False king, Toyne shouted over din. Golden Company fights for coin but bleeds for oaths. We reclaim Westeros for lion bloodline. Jon's jaw clenched. You break oaths every time gold gleams brighter. He spurred Wintermist and lunged. Steel kissed Arak. Weight shifted. Toyne's second slash cut Jon's bracer leather but stopped at rings. Jon countered, slashing Toyne's thigh. Horse screamed, stumbling. Toyne tumbled, rolled, regained stance. They met again on foot. Toyne thrust low. Jon pivoted, drove pommel into Sellsword's jaw. Arak fell. Jon's next strike opened Toyne's cuirass. Blood blossomed. Toyne sank to knees, sneering through crimson teeth. Others will come. The lion roars still. Jon pulled helm free, meeting Toyne's gaze. Let them come. The realm has teeth now. He ended him cleanly. A horn blast sounded. Enemies surrender. Scattered pikemen dropped arms, raising open hands. Dragon shadows stilled overhead. Battle ended before midday sun reached zenith. Yet smoke still crawled from cedars. Caches of grain smoldered from sabotage. Jon surveyed charred granaries. Margaery's worry echoed. Famine breeds rebellion. He ordered bucket chains from ships, men dousing embers. Maester Ellis of Old Town, traveling with fleet, directed salves for burns inflicted by wildfire flecks. Survivors of island villages emerged from cellar burrows, gaunt faces blinking at banners, not of skulls, but wolf rows. Jon knelt to each, promising rebuilding crews, seed grain from Highgarden vaults, protective levees. By dusk, Sellsword prisoners were bound but fed. Tyrion insisted starving mercenaries make dangerous captives. Davos stationed them under guard on anchored hulks. Rumors spread of a second wave north of the estuary. Scouting cogs confirmed sails, but no colors. Likely Lyseni privateers hired by slavers to test the new regime's mettle. Night fell velvet. Jon trudged among makeshift camps, greeting wounded. Rhaegal lay curled in Dune Hollow, wingchar scorching sand into glass. He rumbled low as Jon approached, but allowed him to clean bolt grays with wine-soaked cloth, then smear Sam's balmy paste of comfrey and pine resin. Nightshade perched on a broken lighthouse, tail twitching. Arya arrived, face stained by smoke streaks. She carried a satchel of severed scorpion cranks, trophies. "No bolt will threaten these skies again," she said, gaze aflame. Jon ruffled her hair. She allowed it now and then. "I'm proud." She shrugged. "Daggers do their job." Her smile faded. "But I saw children locked in the lighthouse cellar. Sellswords use them as shield hostages. It ends the same way, every war." "Bah." Jon's shoulders sagged. "We end it by changing tomorrow." She nodded, though sorrow lingered. "Tomorrow starts before dawn. I'll scout the Mandermouth for remaining galleys." With swift step she vanished into wind-swept darkness. Jon looked up. Stars littered the firmament. Somewhere beyond those pinpricks, the wall rebuilders hammered ice, and the free folk hunted caribou again. Duty stretched farther than horizon, but hope stretched further still. 17 days passed before the fleet returned to King's Landing. They sailed beneath arch of autumn leaves along Blackwater. Holds brimming with reclaimed grain. Decks crowded by freed fisherfolk who had chosen to resettle in the Crown Lands under new guarantees. On quays, children waved branches of cedar to honor Greenshield victory. Bread baked with fresh flour perfumed alleyways. Jon strode ashore, Margaery greeting him in apple-green cloak, smelling of rose soap and parchment. Ink stains marked hours drafting relief edicts. She pressed palm to his cheek, worried lines smoothing at his weary grin. "No siege?" she asked. "Only scorched sand and stubborn sellswords," he said, voice low. "But the shield is ours again." Celebration waited, yet council business pressed first. Golden Company survivors would be bargained back to Essos, under promise never to serve Lannister gold again. Tyrion's emissaries drafted clauses binding them to cohort trade charters that forbade returning within a decade on penalty of confiscated treasury. Queensguard, newly reformed under Brienne's command, arrested a known messenger inside the sept scribbling graffiti of the Faith militant's new High Sparrow candidate. Spynet murmured that zealots rallied in Old Town, sermonizing that dragons defied the Seven's natural order. Jon sat with Bran beneath pale afternoon, sun filtering through Godswood transplanted at Aegon's Hill. Ravens hopped among leaves, cawing fragments of secrets. Bran's voice drifted like wind through needles. "Faith gathers to test your rule. They will march soon if unchecked." Jon rubbed temple. "We cannot fight every zealot with steel and flame. That only fans belief of persecution. Then answer belief with belief." Bran whispered. "Send a voice they trust." Jon thought of one man, Sir Loras Tyrell, once Knight of Flowers, brother to Margaery, now healing in Old Town's infirmary after years of imprisonment and battles for his house. A knight revered by the Seven's faithful, yet loyal to family. Jon sought his queen. Margaery read his intent before words formed. "Loras would ride if I asked," she said, fingers lacing around an herbal tonic for cough. "But his wounds ache in cold. We offer him command of a holy escort, treat with high septon. Let him show Dragonsguard the humble as well." Then she brushed knuckles across lips, thinking, "Faith once burned me as sinner. But if my brother can turn their gaze to compassion, the realm heals another wound." Messages flew. Winter's first frost dusted the Kingsroad when Loras arrived. Clad not in gilded armor, but plain steel polished bright. His gait slow, limp subtle beneath cloak, but resolve shone. Jon greeted him in Court of Herons, where a marble pool mirrored gray sky. "I never thought a bastard of Winterfell would sit that throne," Loras said, voice wry. "But here stands a king I respect." He knelt carefully, old burns across back twinging. Yet Jon lifted him before knee touched stone. "You kneel to none but your conscience," Jon said. "Ride south for that conscience. Speak of peace." Loras regarded the dragons perched distant. Regal's scarred wing still healing, Nightshade half again larger than when hatched. "I will speak," he promised. He departed with retinue of septons and knights from each realm. Symbols of unity. Along Rose Road villagers poured pine cones scented with clove into braziers to bless passage. As more weeks slipped into snow-rimmed evenings, letters returned. Old Town's high sept was moved by Loris's testimony. Zealot muster slowed. Debates replaced calls for crusade. The Citadel pledged healers to rebuild burnt septs in the Crown lands. Yet across the narrow sea, another threat rippled. Spies whispered of the Triarchs of Atlantis forging alliance with Yunkish masters, sending black-hulled slave catchers to raid northern shores for future labor markets, where dragons did not patrol. Tyrion's little birds captured one such slaver near Crackclaw Point. Chains still rattled in hold. The Triarch captain bragged of deeper purpose, capturing dragon eggs rumored hidden in Westeros to gift Volantis rule of skies. Jon convened midnight session. Candlelight flickered across tense faces. "They cross our seas believing we are fractured," he paced. "We show them the united wall of waters and flame." Davos proposed building a lighthouse fort on Isle of Faces, central vantage for both east and west coasts. Gendry volunteered to oversee forging of beacon mirrors. Sansa arranged grain subsidies for island fishermen to serve as early warning watchers. Preparations underway, Bran sought Jon in the crypts one quiet dawn. He sat before statue of Lyanna Stark, her stone smile soft and distant. The torch Bran held cast ripples across carved petals in her lap. "Volantis' threat is storm, but not the storm I fear," Bran said. "I saw darker wings east of the smoking sea, scales the color of ash, dragon spawn twisted by sorcery, bound to chains of men who dream of empire reborn." Jon's pulse quickened. How many? 3, perhaps 4, grown in vats of glass and blood magic. They have not yet hatched, but the song of their becoming rings loud across time. "Mander Sawan." Jon placed hand on statue's cold knee. "Can they be stopped before hatching?" "Perhaps," Bran answered, voice thinner. "But threads converge in shadow. To cut them risks unweaving other bonds." Jon inhaled deep stone chill. "Duty again. Guide me when time comes." That time crept sooner than comfort. One dawn a raven arrived with sailing cord knotted thrice, Davos code for grave tidings. It bore scrap of sail-dyed rust, embroidered with red kraken of House Greyjoy defaced by black handprint. Symbol of Euron's rogue faction still prowling stepstones. Message brief. Slave fleet seen near Skagos, steering south. Jon stared at map. Skagos lay far north of most trade lanes. They divert to avoid patrols, using shattered sea ice for cover. Sansa's finger traced possible path. They'll round Cape Kraken, slip into Bay of Seals, raid coastal hamlets. Our watchers scarce there. Margaery's brow furrowed. If they seize folk from the north, the heart of your kingdom, fear returns everywhere. Jon nodded. "I sail tonight." He turned to Arya, waiting in shadow. "I need Nightshade." Rhaegal recuperates still. Arya's reply was swift. "We fly." Davos prepared lean frigates able to navigate ice flows. Gendry insisted to smith fire-tipped arrows using rare wildfire suppressant gel to ignite without harm to dragon scale. Tyrion joined for record, quipping, "Someone must chronicle your stubborn heroics." Margaery accepted Jon's parting with stoic grace, but pressed a carved bone whistle into his palm. "If darkness blinds every lamp, blow this, and I'll know to light the world twice brighter." Her kiss lingered like warm mead on lips. The voyage north cut through cruel seas. Sleet lashed rigging, salt froze on cloaks. Nightshade weathered storms with joyous shrieks, delighting in cold updrafts. Arya's grin matched the dragon's savage glee. Jon studied horizon, scanning for black sails. 4 days later, ice fog parted to reveal a cluster of longships painted midnight, oars muffled in sealskin. No banners flew, but spyglass showed chained villagers on deck. Women and boys bundled for transport. Among slavers strode men in kraken sigils defaced by black hand. and merchants in rust-red robes of Volantis. Iron ballistae jutted from prow, aimed skyward, barbed and heavy. Jon's fleet split. Fastest frigate under Davos circled windward to cut escape route. Archers readied. Jon mounted Nightshade from deck as Gendry's arrow crews lit tips with blue flame that burned slow and bright. He lifted into the icy gust, Arya behind him. She insisted to see the faces of slavers when dragonfire met them. Nightshade shrieked, descending upon the lead longship. Slavers raised crossbows. Bolts clattered off obsidian scales. Jon nudged Dragon's neck. A cone of indigo flame roared, yet he aimed at mast and rigging, not hull. Setting sail ablaze but sparing prisoners below deck. Flames crackled. Ropes snapped. Mast toppled like charred pine into sea, extinguishing cloth. Longship skidded sideways, oars stalling. 2 ballista bolts launched from flanking ship. Thick iron shafts parted air. Nightshade rolled. 1 bolt grazed Hinscale, glancing harmless, but Arya felt wind of the second. She hurled a dragonglass dagger downward. It embedded in ballista gunner's chest as he reloaded. Meanwhile, Davos frigate rammed stern of third longship. Boarding plank slammed. Northmen stormed, cut chains, armed liberated fishermen with captured axes. Tyrion hollered from behind cask cover, scribbling casualty counts even as he ducked arrow flight. On main deck of flagship, a Volantine overseer in striped robes brandished whip at cowering hostages. Jon landed Nightshade across railing. Planks groaned. Overseer's eyes widened. He stammered high Valyrian plea. Jon dismounted, long claw drawn. Overseer swung whip. Craze of fear. Jon sliced once. Whip snapped. Second stroke ended resistance. He raised voice across decks. Lay down arms and live. Some Ironborn obeyed. Memories of dragons at King's Landing vivid. Others fought. Waves accepted them cold. Within an hour, slave fleet subdued. Yet dark cargo emerged in hold of flagship. 3 coffin-long iron crates bound in runic locks. Bran's warning echoed. Jon preed one lid with dagger. Inside, an egg larger than a mastiff's skull. Shell swirling smoky gray laced with veins of crimson light. Faint crackle like coals. Heat pulsed. Arya inhaled. Alive. Tyrion arrived, brows knotted. If Volantis hatches these under their banners, we face mirror of your power. Without your mercy. Jon studied Egg's glow. Then memory stirred. Dragonstow's siege years ago, when Stannis men spoke of stone grown warm at Dragon Prophecy, and stories Sam told of dragons bonded to bloodlines. Dragons hatched with cruelty and heart of men who twisted them might burn continents. He made decision. These eggs will not sail east. He ordered crates loaded onto Nightshade's cargo net. We return them to Dragonmont where Daenerys once summoned life. But we decide their fate with counsel, not war spoils. Nightshade bore eggs suspended like giant pearls beneath wings. The rescue fleet turned south, prisoners clothed and fed from ship stores. As they sailed, northern villagers sang ancient songs of ice hearths kept lit. Jon listened, thinking of Bran's threads, of choices that cut or mend. Back in King's Landing, winter winds funneled through alleys. Chafing cheeks red. Granaries, thanks to green shield grain, brimmed. Bakers sold loaves again for copper kisses. Queen Margaery organized stone soup kitchens where nobles served ladles. Word of such humility traveled faster than any raven. When Jon returned, crowds lined streets despite cold, cheering, "Dragon Wolf! Dragon Wolf!" He dismounted Nightshade outside Red Keep. Margaery embraced him, eyes shining relief. Ghosts circled, sniffing dragon egg scent wafting from crates now guarded in lower vault. Council convened that eve. Bran studied eggs, eyes white. Blood magic weaves here. Volantis priests of R'hllor perhaps fused fire and shadow. These creatures may hatch loyal to first face they see, but their hearts twisted by spell patterns. Tyrion puffed pipe. We could smash them outright. Gendry countered. Waste of life if redemption possible. Margaery spoke softly. If raised with kindness, they could guard coasts. not scorch them. Another net of safety. Jon WED. We are what we do with power. To destroy potential because others misuse it echoes Cersei's fear. We will raise them under watch. Bran will ward with sigils to break dark bonds. Bran nodded, pale lips curved faintly. I will try. Sansa pointed practical finger. But dragons grow hungry. We must expand pastures near Dragon Pit and employ goat herders from Stormlands. Davos grinned. The small council now includes goat rustling. Progress. Arya volunteered to oversee hatchery. I've practiced with one black scamp already. And none doubted her. 2 moons later, first egg cracked under controlled hearth forged of volcanic rock imported from Dragonstone. A head of silver-gray scales emerged, eyes luminous teal like sun through Arctic ice. It chirped, fragile yet fierce. Jon knelt, offered palm. The hatchling tasted air with forked tongue, then butted his hand, accepting scent. He named it Frostfire. City shivered at news of third dragon, yet fear did not overwhelm. Broadsheets depicted Frostfire nestling against orphan children's hospice walls, warming sick rooms with gentle heat at Arya's command. Public trust deepened. Dragons were no longer omen of doom but guardians taught by wolves and roses. Spring's first crocuses speared frost when word arrived from Old Town. Loras negotiations bore fruit. High Septon announced edict blessing. King Jon and Queen Margaery as rightful protectors of realm, acknowledging dragons as flames of dawn guiding mankind. In exchange, Crown funded rebuilding of Sept libraries, lost under Cersei. Jon gladly accepted. Knowledge cost less than war. Only one significant threat remained. Daven Lannister, entrenched at Casterly Rock with remnants of Lion loyalists. Reports held he recruited sell-sales from Tyrosh, promising gold and old glory. Yet as Jon considered siege, Bran warned of omen. Grass grows through lion's den. Nature reclaims, blood there may sprout anger not harvest. Margaery suggested alternative. Invite Daven to council under safe conduct. Offer him warden status of West if he pledges sword and opens mines to feed coin into city repairs. Diplomacy over destruction. Jon agreed. Raven flew. Weeks of tense reply ended with Daven's arrival. Armor polished, but face drawn. In throne room he knelt, offered keys to western ports, swore oath to guard border from pirate raids. Jon returned keys of Casterly Rock's vaults but bound them by trade tariffs that funneled wealth into widows' funds across Westeros. Daven accepted, weary of endless bleed. Peace settled deeper. Years turned. The realm's tapestry thickened with stories of ships sailing under Wolfrow's pennant, delivering grain to drought-struck Dorne, of nightshades' booming roar scaring off Corthine raiders near Arbor, a Frostfire gliding above Storm's End, her breath coaxing lightning storms upward to break summer heat. Rhaegal fathered clutch of eggs left unhatched, awaiting futures beyond memory. Jon and Margaery's first child, Lyanna Rose, was born during a gentle snowfall. She entered the world to the rumble of dragons perched on keep towers, and her wails harmonized with their cries. The kingdom lit torches in every village. From Skagos to Dorne beacons flickered in chain of orange constellations visible from the sky. Arya and Gendry wed in simple ceremony beneath weirwood transplanted to city gardens. She wore leather, he wore soot, their vows brief. Hammer and needle, iron and edge bound. Nightshade roared blessing, then stole roast boar from feast table, which guests laughed off as omen of unstoppable appetite. Sansa accepted suitor from Tarth, Sir Eldrick, cousin to Brienne, yet she took no vow until she finished weaving roads that stitched the realm like arteries. When she wed, the bridal procession marched across stones she had laid herself. People called her Lady of Ways. Tyrion established University of King's Landing, open to lowborn for price of silver mark. Classes in reading, arithmetic, and governance flourished. He personally lectured on history of bad decisions. Drawing crowds. Bran vanished for moons at a time, exploring memory of weirwoods. He returned one winter to deliver warning of a great storm off Jade Sea, and left again. His body aged slowly, His eyes grew calmer, his smile rarer but warmer. Davos eventually retired to his shipyard in White Harbor, teaching grandchildren seafaring. Yet each spring he visited capital, pockets lined with smuggled candies for Lyanna Rose and Frostfire, who adored the taste of honeyed almonds. Across seas, Volantis replaced Triarch Warhawks. With Peace Party, after slave revolts, partially inspired by freed Westerosi captives. Golden Company fractured, some veterans settling as farmers on lands once barren along mander banks, their children speaking Reach lilt. Highgarden's roses bloomed thicker than memory. Willis oversaw crossbreeding of winter-hardy varietals, gifting blue blossoms to Winterfell for each year's first Frost Festival, the Gardens of Wolf's Bloom. So citizens named the capital terraces, perfumed whole boroughs. In the north, the wall, rebuilt with giants' help, stood studded with black obsidian layers. Wildlings traded furs for grain through gates opened monthly. Some free folk joined watch ranks, proving oaths can outlive prejudice. Throughout, Jon and Margaery ruled not from spiked seat, but from courtyards among people. They signed decrees beneath open sky, believing walls too easily grow ears of deceit. Jon's gray and beard streaked only lightly. Margaery's laughter lines deepened. One midsummer dusk, they walked ramparts of Dragon Pit, hand in hand, watching trio of dragons circle sunset flames. Shadows elongated across rooftops where children pointed, unconcerned. Margaery leaned into Jon. "Our peace feels fragile still." She murmured. "Glass can shatter," he acknowledged. "But it also reflects light beautifully." He brushed wind-loose hair from her brow. "We keep mending cracks." She exhaled content breath. "Then let's walk each day hammering new seams." Below, bells tolled evening prayer without fear. In far distance, thunderheads brewed, but for now, held silver lining. And as dragons glided in gilded sky, and people bustled in markets lit by paper lanterns, shaped like roses and wolves, King's Landing thrummed with life that had learned, through fire and frost, to bloom, break, and bloom again. Always reaching for dawn. Ka. Soft night winds brushed the lavender terraces of the Queen's Gardens, carrying whispers of roses, sea salt, and the faint musk of dragonscale. Margaery Tyrell, now Margaery Stark, though the realm preferred to meld both names and call her simply Queen of Wolves and Roses, wandered the upper paths barefoot, savoring the cool flagstones after a day of fierce heat that left the city's bronze statues warm to the touch. Above her, lamplighters strolled curvature of parapets, striking flint to wick and dotting the sky with man-made constellations. Farther still, dragons wheeled in slow arcs, their wing beats like vast bellows stirring embers hidden among the stars. She paused beside a fountain where lilies floated pale as ghost sighs. The water's mirrored surface held a fractured image of the past decade. The faint silver thread at her temple, earned in negotiation chambers, tiny lines at the corners of green-gold eyes, deepened by laughter and sleepless council vigils. And, behind her reflection, the silhouette of Jon approaching, boots silent, cloak rippling. He had shed coronation garb tonight for a tunic of undyed wool, bone toggles at throat, as if intending to disappear into common dark. But moonlight betrayed him, silvering the scar across his brow, picking out the interplay of wolf and rose stitched above his heart. He halted when their reflections kissed on the water, and she turned. "Lyanna Rose sleeps at last?" she asked, voice low to spare the dreaming lilies. Jon nodded, brushing stray curls from his brow. She recited the names of every castle ghost Grand Maester Barwood claimed still stalks the corridors, then insisted Frostfire would protect her from them. Took the hatchling 20 lullabies before her lids drooped. Margaery laughed softly. "Barwood encourages too many tales." "She will start raising ravens in her chamber next." "She's your daughter," Jon said. "Ravens, roses, anything that fits into tiny fists." His gaze roved surrounding shadows. Bran called council at dawn. Says he dreamt frost across summer's sea, doggy? Margaery's breath condensed in pale ring. Frost across tropical water? Omen or distant weather shift? Unsure. He asked we gather inner circle. Joan's hand sought hers. She wove fingers through his. I would rather speak of gardens and lullabies, he confessed. But storms seldom wait. As if summoned, distant thunder rumbled from the east. No cloud marred the sky, yet the ground vibrated. Joan's head snapped toward the horizon where a crimson smear pulsed above Blackwater Bay. A heartbeat later, bells shrilled. Shrill, frantic, triple-pealed, signal of unknown celestial phenomenon. They hurried to the parapet overlooking the city. Lanterns bobbed along ramparts. Guards grasped spears, scanning sky. There, straddling the rim of night, an undulating ribbon of red-green fire shimmered. Too low for aurora, and too vast for torchlight. It snaked over the bay, then ruptured into a rain of sparks that hissed into water, leaving trails of glowing steam. Joan's breath misted. No comet. Some magic. Margaery squeezed his hand. Bran, they said in unison. Before the weirwood throne and the Tower of Whispering Leaves, Bran's eyes gleamed milk opalescent. Roots carpeted flagstones, pulsing faint emerald. When Jon and Margaery arrived, they found Arya leaning against a pillar. Nightshade coiled outside the broken arch, smoke wisping from nostrils. Sansa sat primly at a carved desk, quill poised though inkpot closed. Tyrion perched on stool, grip white upon a flagon. Davos paced, palms clasped behind back. Only Bran remained utterly still, a sapling of flesh among trees. He blinked, pupils returning. The sky burns where cold should never reach, he said. An echo of Valyria's doom, but this time woven by living hands. Tyrion set down flagon. Volantis. Bran inclined head. The Triarch peace collapsed last month, though ravens carry nothing. Red Temple zealots seized war galleys, bow new hatchlings to their priests. They weave stormfire, ritual combining dragonflame and shadow ice, drawn from shivering sea currents. Sansa frowned. Shadow ice? Cold given hunger, Bran murmured. They attempt to birth a dragon of frost and flame, a scourge loyal to neither warmth nor living memory. Tonight's sky was test spark. Arya pushed off pillar. Can it fly yet? Not flesh, Bran answered. But spirit. If they succeed in binding spirit to hatched body, it will breathe a blight that neither stone nor steel withstand. End. Jon exhaled. Location? Isle of Cedars, off Volantene coast. They built obsidian pylons to anchor ritual. Egg within basalt cradle nearly ready. Tyrion whistled. Cedars sits 2 weeks sail if winds favor. Longer with escort. Fewer with dragons, Arya observed, eyes bright with promise. Margaery stepped forward. We cannot spare you both, Jon. Realms still mends roads. Another warfront here could unravel unity. Jon's brow furrowed. I'll go. Frostfire small, but swift. Nightshade. Rhaegal can guard capital. And Arya shook head. Nightshade and I fly. You remain. Kings cannot chase every terror. Jon's jaw set, but he knew truth. Removing king and queen at once invited opportunists. He glanced to Bran, who nodded. Fate threads converged on Nightshade's wings, not Rhaegal's. Margaery touched Arya's wrist. Take Gendry. Stormrunner can bear supplies. I'll complain, Arya smirked. But hammersuits smashing pylons. Davos raised hand. I'll captain. Tyrion wiped mouth. And I'll chronicle, if only to ensure someone later believe. Bran closed eyes. And I will walk the storm, guiding when sight fails. Preparations consume 2 days. Stormrunner refitted with reinforced mast. Hull plated in thin Valyrian steel-laced ironwood strips. Experimental forgework, Gendry devised to endure dragon landing mid-sea. Holds stocked with wildfire suppressant, obsidian chisels, and casks of salted cod. Sansa wrote edicts delegating commerce to a council of guildmasters should capital lose all senior advisors at sea. Margaery dispatched ravens to Highgarden, seeding rumor of a grand tourney to mask absence of notable figures. Lyanna Rose, sensing gravity, gifted Arya her stuffed direwolf, stitched from scraps. "For luck," she declared. Lisp pronounced. Arya strapped it to Nightshade's saddlebow, unsmiling lest tears escape. Dawn of departure. A hush-draped dragon pit. Frost-limbed stone tiles, though month stood mid-spring. A sign of fledgling Frostfire's influence. Rhaegal roared atop a column, rattling scaffolds. Nightshade crouched, obsidian wings mantling. Frostfire, flitting restless, bumped Arya's shoulder as if petitioning to join. Jon ordered her tethered. One hatchling risky enough. Arya vaulted into saddle, Gendry hauling pack behind. Davos stood at gangplank of Stormrunner, graybeard ruffling in wind. Tyrion waved quill like sword. Jon approached sister, placed gloved hand on hers. "Return," he said. She smirked. "Needle always finds the path home." Nightshade launched, claws scraping stone. Wind caught wings. They spiraled skyward, trailing curl of black smoke that tore banners loose from moorings. Clouds parted. Dragon and rider vanished toward sunrise. Stormrunner unfurled sails dyed sea green. Oars bit water, following shrinking silhouette. Jon watched until nothing remained but gull cries. Margaery threaded arm through his. "We tend this garden." He nodded, though heart soared after obsidian wings. Nightshade rode jetstream above summer sea, outtracing Stormrunner by shadows and leagues. Arya judged progress by star drift and the taste of salt. Bran's whisper sometimes fluttered through her thoughts. "Adjust northward to skirt Stormcell. Dip south to avoid Triarch patrol." Each time she obeyed, they passed unchallenged. Gendry dozed behind, one arm looped in saddle leather. On third night, moon hid behind shredded cloud. Ahead, shimmering net of light rippled. Arachnid threads of azure and crimson weaving across horizon. Nightshade hissed, banking. Arya felt chill seep through furs. Bran's voice. "The ritual's veil extends. Seek breach at dawn." They camped on a lonely islet no larger than a merchant square. Dragon curled tight as cat, while wind whistled through mangrove stumps. Arya crept to shore, kneeling at tide pool. Phosphorescent plankton glimmered. When she dipped fingertip, water flashed blue then subsided, leaving skin numb. Gendry joined, hammer slung. "I feel metal hum," he murmured. Indeed, the head of his hammer quivered near surface. "Magnetics," Arya said. The word felt inadequate. They returned to Dragon's warmth. Sleeping fitful. Dawn broke red as open wound. They took flight. The veil appeared now as colossal dome, translucent yet dense, centered over Isle of Cedars. Through it, they glimpsed basalt cliffs carved into stepped terraces crawling with red-robed priests. Pyres blazed green, releasing plumes that cooled to diamond dust before falling. In the center courtyard, 4 obsidian pylons surrounded a basalt cradle, where massive egg glowed white-hot, cracks spidering across shell, veins pulsing icy blue. Arya's skin prickled. Nightshade's scales flashed violet, some frost rimming edges. Bran's whisper urgent. "Break pylons, sever lines of power." Egg not yet soulbound. Cloaking Nightshade in cloud wisps, Arya descended along dome's outer curve. She placed palm against barrier. Flesh buzzed. She drew needle, etched a circle. Metal sparked red, but veil held. Gendry produced obsidian chisel. At its touch, membrane rippled, parted silently. Nightshade slipped through. Dome sealed behind like water. The air inside felt thinner, scented of sulfur and cinnamon. Priests chanted around pylons, torches held high. Arya landed Dragon behind an unfinished ziggurat, shadow cloaking them. She slid to ground, signaled Gendry to opposite flank. They would breach separately, hammer and blade. She crept through cedar coppice, feet silent. Acolyte emerged, brushing needles. Arya's hand covered his mouth. Dagger hilt tapped temple. He slumped. She neared first pylon. Black glass rising 60 feet. Runes pulsing azure. At base, copper conduits channeled essence toward egg. Arya drew pouch of wildfire suppressant. Smeared paste along conduit couplings. Sparks fizzled out. She jammed obsidian spike between seams. Pylon hummed, light flickered. Across courtyard, Gendry hefted hammer, brought it down on tertiary conduit. Metal squealed, snapped. Red-robed priests shrieked. Spotting them. Horns sounded. Nightshade erupted from hiding. Flame jetting violet. Priests scrambled. Some hurled bronze knives which melted mid-air. Dragonfire engulfed, second pylon. Glass cracking. Shards raining molten. Still, egg pulsed. A priest, taller and older, eyes white with milk blindness, raised staff crowned with dragon skull fragment. He chanted. Frost gust spiraled from staff, coiling into Nightshade's flame, forming spear of ice that lanced dragon's flank. Nightshade roared. Blood, smoking cold, spattered basalt. Arya snarled, leapt, flung dagger that pierced priest's throat. Staff dropped, ice evaporated. But commotion shook courtyard. Soldiers bearing shields of hammered scales poured from tunnels. Horn blasts answered from cliffs, naval reinforcements. Gendry bellowed, swinging hammer and arc that flattened two warriors. Arya darted beneath shield lines, slicing tendons. Nightshade battered with tail, smashing foes into cedar trunks. Third pylon still thrummed. Jones borrowed dragonglass arrow tips hung at Arya's belt. She snapped one to fit javelin handle length. Hurled. It embedded near pylon's heart. Light stuttered, then died as crack split column. Only final pylon remained, closest to egg. A barricade of elite guards ringed it, obsidian spears crackling with frost. They chanted low. Their bodies shimmered with runic tattoos dampening dragonfire. Nightshade attempted flame. Heat met aura, sputtered. Arya cursed, vaulted onto dragon's shoulders, urging him airborne. They soared high, then stooped like falcon. At last moment Arya leapt, landing atop pylon's crown. Glass scalded her boots. She drove last obsidian spike downward with needle's pommel. Crack raced. Guards cried out, aura flickering. Nightshade crashed his full weight into base, jaws clamping around conduit, tearing. Pylon shattered, pieces tumbling as Arya rode debris, landing in crouch. Power lines severed, eggs glow dimmed. Cracks widened. Energy vented skyward in silent lightning arcs. Veil overhead shimmered, fissuring like ice on thaw. With thunderous sigh, dome collapsed outward. Energy dissipating into harmless sparks that fell like midday stars. Priests wailed. Many fled. Yet along docks, war galleys still drew nearer. Sails red like open wounds. Their ballistae trained upward. Nightshade bled slow from frost wound. Each breath labored. Arya clambered onto saddle, guiding dragon toward cliff edge, where Stormrunner's mass now appeared beyond breakwater. Gendry sprinted below, hammer slung across back, pursued by 3 priests wielding scythes. He dashed across gangplank of a captured skiff and pushed off. Nightshade flapped toward Stormrunner, but faltered, one wing partly frozen. Arya urged him to keep height. Bran's whisper. Warmth heals. She recalled geothermal vents along Cedar's north beach. They vented steam visible en route. She steered dragon to plume rising beyond ridge. Nightshade hovered, descending into scalding mist. Heat licked wing membrane. Frost cracked, flaked away. Painful, but healing. Meanwhile, onshore, egg shuddered unattended. Without pylons. Shell cooled. Cracks widened with uneven rhythm. But malicious spirit lacked anchor. Bran, walking ravens above, sang ancient word of closure. Spirit dissipated as mist coiling into cedar branches, vanishing like breath. Arya saw brightness fade from courtyard, tension uncoiling. She pressed forehead to Nightshade's neck. Relief, flooding. Yet distant galleys threatened. Bran's whisper again, torch the fleet. Let fear end pursuit. Nightshade surged skyward, frostblood now boiling with righteous heat. Arya directed columns of violet fire upon lead galley's mast. Sails combusted. Stormrunner loosed flaming arrows into others. Panic seized remaining vessels. They scattered, oars flailing. By dusk, flames dotted horizon. Ashes skirled on tide. Isle of Cedars lay quiet, but scarred. Gendry rowed skiff to nearby cove where Nightshade landed. Davos approached, clasping Arya's arm. Victory, but cost. She glanced at Dragon's wound, membrane torn but knitting. We live, she said. She turned to crumbled pylons. And whatever horror they desired is dead, unborn. Tyrion scribbled notes. Shaking head. Dead, unborn. I need better poetry. They spent 2 days dismantling remaining conduits, freeing slaves forced to haul obsidian. Arya led them to captured galleys, promised safe passage to Pentos. Gendry forged crude axes so freedmen felt armed. Nightshade hunted fish, feeding wounded. Davos charted route home, circumventing Volantene patrols. On dawn of departure, Bran's voice carried via raven perched on rail. Storm quelled. Eastern sky clears. Bring cedar seedlings for new grove in Queen's Gardens. A reminder growth rises from ash. Arya gathered saplings, roots wrapped in damp cloth. King's Landing welcomed them with roar of bells. Frostfire sprinted along Seagate walls, trilling greeting as Nightshade descended. Lyanna Rose laughed atop Frostfire's back, Jon steadying reins, her curls blowing. When Arya dismounted, the child flung arms around Ant, face smeared with berry juice. Nightshade nuzzled sibling hatchling, their combined roars tumbled across harbor. In throne room, Bran smiled faintly at cedar saplings now planted beside throne dais. Ash to bloom, he murmured. Council convened. Tyrion detailed events, embellishing heroics until Davos coughed pointedly. Gendry laid frost-shattered hammer before Jon. Might mend, but story better left in dents. Margaery listened, hand clutching Jon's. When tale ended, she rose, addressing council and assembled lords. Dragons of frost and shadow would have raised our peace, yet courage untwined ritual before it could breathe. Let this stand not merely as triumph of arms, but of vigilance. We guard realm not only through fire, but through roots we plant, roads we pave, books we share. She gestured to saplings. Remember cedar seeds carried across seas in wounded hands. Growth is gift of daring hearts. Pause thundered. Jon stepped forward. Titles mean less than deeds, yet deeds deserve name. He turned to Arya. I name you Lady of Shadows and Flame, Protector beyond horizon. Arya rolled eyes but bowed. Cheers rose. He faced Gendry. Master Hammer of Dragonforge. Your craft shields wings and walls. Tyrion raised brow. And what of chroniclers? You are already master of quill and mischief. Jon smirked. Celebration spilled into night. Lanterns shaped like cedar cones floated up, joining dragon silhouettes against moon. Months later, Spring Peak crowned capital cane fields with white blossoms. Cedars from Isle of Cedars thrived in Queen's Gardens, their scent spicy, alien yet welcome. Children wove wreaths from their needles, gifting to Frostfire, who wore them proudly. Jon reclined on terrace bench sharing bread dipped in honey with Margaery. Sunlight dappled through cedar branches, playing across facelines eased by peace. He watched Lyanna Rose chase kitten across grass. Saw Rhaegal lounging on distant keep spire, eyes half-lidded. I dreamed last night, Jon said quietly. Of green fields stretching from Winterfell to Dorne. No battle banners, only farmers singing. Margaery leaned head on his shoulder. Dreams root the future. We water them with daily kindness. Footsteps approached. Bran, eyes clear, carried small scroll. Ravens from Old Town, he said. The Citadel confirms harvest yields surpass projection by 20%. Famine fears eased. Jon exhaled gratitude. Then next winter, none will starve. Bran smiled, rare, wistful. Threads weave bright for now, but loom never stops. He rested hand on cedar trunk. Enjoy calm. Storms come and pass. What matters is what grows in their wake. He left to join Tyrion at Arched Bridge, where university students debated ethics of dragonfire in agriculture. Margaery kissed Jon's temple. We cannot still the loom, she murmured. But we can choose the patterns. Jon wrapped arm around her, eyes tracking daughter's laughter curling skyward like lark song. For that moment, patterns glimmered gold and green, wolf and rose entwined under cedar shade, and somewhere beyond sight, deep in caverns beneath dragonstone, the last shards of dark eggshell crumbled into dust, its corrupted magic dissipated, replaced by faint heartbeat of new hatchling, pale as sunrise, claimed by no ritual but the simple warmth of stone and song of tides. Another chance? Fragile as feather. Because the realm had learned, every miracle carried risk, and every risk required guardianship, but also faith that from ruin, life could unfurl anew, again and again, so long as hearts held courage and hands remained willing to build where others would only burn. Silver dawn seeped over the crown of Maegor's holdfast, filtering through cedar boughs and waking birds whose song stitched the early hush into a living tapestry. Jon stirred in the half-light, finding Margaery already risen from their broad low bed, her silhouette framed by open shutters where a breeze carried the mingled aromas of sea spray, blooming jasmine, and the faint sulfur tang drifting from distant Dragonmount. In the cradle near the foot of the bed, Lyanna Rose waffled soft breath, clutching a wolf-stuffed doll by one ear. Jon rolled quietly to his feet, shrugging into a linen shirt, and crossed to the window. Below, the lower terrace bustled with first-shift gardeners hauling cedar mulch and rose cuttings. Pale columns of tea-colored steam curled from the dew-wet lawns, where frost-fire honed takeoff leaps, wings snapping open, then folding again under the watchful eye of Ser Brienne. Nightshade still roosted on the Grand Sept's broken west buttress, a silhouette against paling stars, healing frost wound now no more than a marbled silk scar that glowed faint violet when the dragon flexed. Margaery turned at Jon's gentle footfall, setting down a clay cup of small beer. "Early council," she reminded him, brushing fingers across his jaw. "You promised the Rhoynar envoys an audience before midday prayers." He exhaled a rueful breath. "And my steward stacked petitions another foot high overnight. There's a riot of artisans begging export charters. Sunspear's market fair draws near, and Maester Barwood hopes you'll lend presence to lecture on historic draconian stewards." Her smile teased. "He swears the hatchlings behave better when a king listens." Jon managed half a grin, though thoughts already churned. The last 3 weeks had unspooled in relative quiet. Repairs to Isle of Cedar's outposts. Triarch negotiators sued for armistice, under letters sealed by Volantis. Under Ravos accepted arbitration of damaged shipping lanes. But rumors prickled like thorns. A Brevosi Spice Guild ledger listing clandestine payments to unknown cell sales, and 2 Free Cities corsairs captured near the Arbor swore under Truthveen that the Galden Company plotted yet another risk. Jon filed each account into growing ledgers of caution. He kissed Margaery's brow, collected his leather jerkin, and tiptoed past the cradle. Lyanna stirred, lids fluttering. Her father paused, brushing a curl from her cheek before descending the stair. The small council sat within the newly renovated solar of 7 silences. A round chamber whose painted ceiling depicted the 7 not in static sanctity, but gardening together. Smith bending metal arcs for trellises, mother coaxing seedlings, father pruning, maiden scattering dew, warrior clearing stones, crone planting wisdom scrolls, stranger scattering compost to nourish new life. It had been Margaery's commission, and Jon loved its audacity. Tyrion arrived first, parchment satchel bulging, muttering about ink stains on best doublet. He poured wine, offered Jon a quick nod, and began sorting scrolls by urgency. Sansa entered next in fur-trimmed violet gown. Flanked by her scribe Mayara, Gendry followed bearing an iron casket whose lid steamed faintly, escorted by Arya. Davos took position near the hearth, rubbing hands against faint chill. Bran rolled in last, eyes luminous. No trumpets, no flourish. Just work. Jon opened. Report since dawn? Tyrion unrolled a dispatch. Bravosi envoy Rialta Faso arrives tomorrow seeking trade corridor across the neck for salmon and razor clams. She brings 3 barges of painted glass as gift. She also, he smirked, requests private demonstration of dragonflight. Something to impress Bravos Sea Lord Council. Sansa raised a brow. We have steep tariffs on glass due to local kilns. Lowering them invites argument from our guilds. Jon noted. We counter with seasonal wavier limited to 2 fairs. Bravosi glass techniques could elevate our artisans if they share skill in exchange. Davos nodded. Fair enough. He presented folded parchment. Secondly, North Coast hamlets along Bay of Seals request stonecutters to reinforce docks before high swells. Wildlings volunteer labor, but lack tools. Grant them, Arya said instantly. Those villages fed armies during long night. Jon agreed. Gendry cleared throat, set casket on table. Remember the fragments we found on cedars, lead vials lined in blue crystal. I melted one, found residue. Quicksilver fused with powdered dragon glass. Dangerous. Curdles blood on contact. Now, Tyrion blanched. A weapon, likely essence for Frostfire rituals, Gendry replied. But someone refined it further. He opened casket. Inside, a glass vial containing violet dust glimmered like starlight. I stabilized it. Neutral. We can't allow fragments to circulate. Jon ordered Master Barwood to store vial in obsidian vault under triple seal, and quietly tasked alchemists to find antidote. Bran's gaze remained far away. Jon guessed his brother already listened to whispers from the roots of the world. As councils concluded, Bran finally spoke. Voice soft. Last night the oak at Castle Blacktine shook free of leaves. Those spring clings strong. Ravens told me whispers in dead tongues. A rider crossed stepstones carrying banner of burned lion. Where he treads, men vanish. Jon stiffened. The true lion. Tyrion sighed. Never dies, that damned lion. Arya leaned on table edge. Want me to track him? Jon met her wolfish grin. We need eyes first. Take the Mask Guild's scrying lenses. See what hunts. Nando and. Sansa glanced at Bran. Omen of falling leaves? He exhaled. Like blood from old wounds reopened. But we prepare the bandages already. He wheeled away, leaving room chilled despite hearth. Mid-afternoon, Jon accompanied Margaery to the Dragon Pit, where Barwood lectured a motley circle of apprentices and curious nobles. On a raised platform, Frostfire perched, wings partially unfurled, scales shimmering opalescent shades. Beside her crouched the new hatchling, named Dawnflame by Lyanna Rose, pale gold eyes blinking at sun. Barwood droned. Observe the caudal ridge, still pliant. We must feed high calcium bones else curvature forms. The apprentices nodded fervently. Scribbling. Frostfire tolerated the fuss, turning head now and then to nip runaway quill. Jon smiled at the picture of scholarship amid dragons. A decade ago, City Watch would have fled. Lyanna toddled across courtyard chasing butterflies. Ghost trailed behind, patient sentinel. Suddenly Dawnflame flapped wings experimentally, stirring dust. Lyanna squealed, clapping tiny hands. The hatchling's amber gaze fixed on her doll. Margaery tensed, but Frostfire uttered a crooning hum. Parent instructing child. Dawnflame stilled, lowering head. Lyanna petted warm snout with fearless delight. Jon felt swell of wonder. The future his father never imagined. Near dusk, Arya prepared for reconnaissance. She donned soft gray leathers, needle sheathed at hip, pack of condensed rations. Gendry fussed with saddle straps. She swatted him. "I survived Citadel Cult," she teased. "A scout ride's child's play." He scowled fondly. "Humor me. I won't sleep if buckle breaks." He tightened last knot, then drew her close, pressing hammer-calloused thumb against her brow. "Return. Always." She kissed him brief and fierce, then vaulted atop Nightshade. The dragon vaulted skyward. Silhouette carving crimson clouds as banners snapped in downdraft. That night, Jon and Margaery dined on terrace with Sansa, Bran, and Tyrion, under lanterns of blown Brevosi glass. Servants placed platters of river trout, cedar-smoked boar, and honey-glazed carrots. They ate slowly, voices low. Tyrion recalled a bawdy limerick about triarchs. Margaery rolled eyes but giggled. Bran smiled at laughter's resonance. Later, alone, Jon stood on parapet, gazing at constellations. He fingered the bone whistle on thong around neck. Margaery's gift. Peace felt fragile as glass, but he vowed to keep weaving. Across storm-littered seas, Nightshade glided over stepstones bathed in moonlight. Arya scanned ruins where pirates once roosted. She glimpsed fires flickering in labyrinthine gullies, renegade camps. She swooped low, dragon shadow spooking sentries. She counted banners, red skeleton, on black field. Not lion. But on a rise overlooking valley, she saw a lone standard. Golden lion half burnt away, beneath it crossed keys. House Lannister minor branch. Men knelt before man in battered crimson plate. He raised scroll, threw it onto flame, ashes scattering. Arya caught his profile. Square jaw, broken nose, eyes hard as iron. Rumors named him Ser Calan. Lannister. Bastard cousin to Cersei, once thought slain at Blackwater. Alive. Arya withdrew. Heart drumming. Lightning flashed distant. Storm brewed. Returning high into cloud cover, Bran's voice brushed her thoughts. The leafless oak spreads roots beneath salt. Marked their ships. She angled Nightshade seaward, glimpsing 3 Dromons anchored behind promontory. Sails furled. On hulls, fresh paint disguised them as Pentoshi traders, but lion iconography faint underbrush. She noted shapes, hull count, and cluster of crates strapped on deck. Cylindrical barrels etched with unfamiliar sigils. The dust, she guessed. Frostfire reagent repackaged? She felt chill. Nightshade banked north, disappearing into night. Arya's returned 3 days later, found counsel awaiting. She sketched map, described crates. Tyrion rubbed chin. Those sigils, sounds like alchemist network from Tyrosh. They process quicksilver. Perhaps remnant of Frostfire cult, shifting sponsors. Davos paste. Stepstones vantage threatens shipping. They could puncture our lifeline from Dorne. Jon said yaw. We end it before coil tightens. He looked to Bran. How many threads unravel if we strike? Bran's fingers brushed table, as if plucking invisible harp. If strike swift. Few. Delay invites tangle. Memsao. Decision made. A targeted nighttime assault. Dragons burn barrels. Stormrunner raids flagship. Seize documents. Gendry prepared flight harness for Jon. First time in months he'd mount Regal in battle. Dragon's scar nearly faded. Margaery argued lightly but accepted. Sansa commanded city guard in absence. Bran provided cryptic counsel. Fire must kiss salt to purify dust. Aim for sea, not sky. They puzzled but trusted. The assault came on moonless night. Regal and Nightshade flew silent, bellies skimming waves, reflections rippling. Stormrunner ghosted behind cliffs. Regal struck first, unleashing narrow column of emerald flame into hull of lead Drummond. Arya dived, torching deck barrels. As flames met reagent, violet-white plume erupted. Shockwave flinging waves sky high. Saltwater geyser hissed, Dust combusted. Fire kissed salt. Secondary ship tried to flee, unfurling sails. But Jon guided Rhaegal's fire across mast, dropping sails into sea where each emblazoned lion sank. Nightshade harried archers, tails sweep flinging them overboard. Sir Callon leapt onto quarterdeck, brandishing black glass halberd. Arya landed, blade drawn, confronted him. "The lion's pride ends tonight," she declared. Callon laughed, thrust. Needle parried sparks. They circled flames. Meanwhile, Stormrunner's crew boarded lower deck, seizing ledgers. Callon lunged. Arya sidestepped, slash hamstring. He roared, swung wide. She ducked, drove needle through visor slot. Quick, clean. He fell. Helm clattering. Firelight danced across lifeless eyes. Nightshade roared triumph. Arya slashed anchor ropes. Ship drifted toward blazing sister. Bran's whispered wind blew, guiding burning hulks together. Explosion sent water columns skyward, dousing cinders. Third ship surrendered before dragons circled. Prisoners claimed dust stolen from Ashai traders, destined for siege of King's Landing. Cargo now sea-soaked. Stormrunner towed, captured flagship home. Jon and Arya returned by dawn, weary yet victorious. Only 2 crew wounded. Council praised success. City rejoiced. But Jon felt weight. Threats keep rising. He conferred quietly with Margaery. Perhaps, he mused, the realm demands not endless war chiefs, but stewards who teach enemies better harvest than conquest. Jon considered. Convert pirates into coastal guard, grant stepstones charters. Lure them with grain, not blood. He tasked Tyrion to craft proposals. He also wrote Decree Founding Order of Cedar Shield. Mixed band of former foes trained in both sword and stewardship. Rebuilding, irrigation, firefighting. Symbol: cedar leaf overlaying direwolf and rose. Arya accepted role as silent patron, though she refused formal title. Years unfolded like petals. Cedar shields pacified stepstones through rescue missions and famine relief. Grain yield surged. Frostfire matured into majestic guardian. Dawnflame into nimble scout. Another egg hatched. Sea Star. Blue-green scales mirroring deep waters. Lyanna Rose became first child in centuries to train hatchling beyond infant stage. Bran aged little. He spent seasons speaking with ghosts of weirwoods, assuring balance. Sansa's roads connected last isolated valleys. Traveling theaters spread stories of courage and reconciliation. Gendry's Dragonforge pioneered lightweight breastplate alloy, gifted to City Watch. Tyrion completed his tome Dreams of Wolves and Roses, chronicling transition from Iron Throne to Cedar Court. On the 20th anniversary of their reign, Jon and Margaery hosted realm-wide festival. Delegations marched under unified banners. Dothraki raced horses alongside Reach jousters. Braavosi glassblowers lit night with floating lanterns shaped as dragons. During closing ceremony, Jon stood on marble dais within Queen's Gardens, cedars towering. He spoke quiet but firm. "We were taught kings rule by fear or divine right. We have learned rulers are gardeners. Cut weeds, water seeds, trust sunlight of truth. Let our children inherit soil richer than we found." Crowd roared. Lyanna Rose, now near grown, released Sea Star skyward. Dragon climbed into dusk, trailing sparks of bioluminescent dust concocted by alchemists for spectacle. Margaery squeezed Jon's hand, eyes shimmering. "You once doubted you belonged on any throne," she whispered. "I'm still not sure," he answered softly. "But I belong beside you." They kissed beneath cedar shade while dragons etched constellations of flame across twilight. A testament that worlds could be remade not just by conquest, but by stubborn, rising hope. Beyond horizon, new winds stirred unknown sails, and distant fires colored clouds, as they ever would. Yet in King's Landing, amid cedar and rose and wolf, peace took root deeper each passing dawn, resilient, expansive as dragon wings beating in harmonious sky.